Friday, 8 a to 11 a Eastern Time. Your home for all things Big 12.
And away we go on a Monday. Happiness is a choice. Thank you for choosing us. Along with James Westling, I am Ari Temkin. On this Modelo Monday. What's up, dude? How are you?
Man, I'm good. Full weekend of basketball.
Full weekend of basketball.
A little bit of football sprinkled in. Was there a game last night?
Yeah, some great football over the weekend. 4 teams are left in the NFL. Of course, we've got the national championship game for college football tonight. The Indiana Hoosiers are favored to win a national championship tonight in college football. If you can believe that, anything is possible if Indiana can win a national championship in football.
Dude, what a time to be alive. And I think the line is, 8.5, as we discussed on Friday?
8.5, 9?
ESPN sent us an email. They wanted all the announcers to make their pick. I don't know where it's going. I haven't seen it posted. But my initial thought was Indiana's going to crush these guys. I had like 35-13 written down, and then I thought, okay, what if nobody else goes that bold and I get singled out?
And then they lose.
And they're like, this guy's an idiot. He'll never call another game for us again. So I went a little bit more conservative, but I do think I had Indiana covering this.
What if they did actually make decisions on their staffing based on that? Like, who's this guy that picked what?
I didn't overthink it at all. So, yeah. Delete.
Should have just gone with Miami. Why not?
I wonder how many guys did.
I mean, Indiana is the overwhelming favorite.
Is anybody picking Miami?
I think I might.
Is there anybody really out there saying Miami is going to do it? You think Miami can win the game?
Very much so, yeah.
Don't they have like a star safety who's out for this one?
The first half, that's the guy that is
okay.
being sued by Wisconsin because he's the one that signed a deal and then just decided, you know what, the deal we signed, actually, I'd rather not. I know he signed a contract and everything, but
and he's missing a half.
Yeah, because it's targeting in the Peach Bowl.
Okay.
Yeah.
That probably doesn't have a massive impact.
I mean, when you're going up against the Heisman Trophy winner that just had 42 points on Oregon, it might make a difference.
Like Indiana just keeps doing things to teams that I didn't think they could do, which is why I think they'll crush Miami. Because on paper and with a game of this pedigree, that shouldn't happen. But they shouldn't have beaten Alabama by 35, and they did.
Right.
They shouldn't have beaten Oregon by 30-plus and had a 50-burger in that game, and they did. So that's just what my gut says.
Yeah. No, I mean, they have taken down all of the Giants. I mean, basically the only one they haven't, I guess, would be Georgia, but Bama has been more of a giant than Georgia has from a brand perspective.
Yep.
Slayed Ohio State and then Oregon twice. Alabama. I mean, this is Indiana football. It's truly is remarkable.
Totally.
Yeah, so last night, of course, the Bears lost. Really, really tough loss, but a really great season, fun season for the Bears. And, it was so much fun for me, James, because you're similar to me in that, you've got kids, boys that are really coming of age when it comes to their sports fandom. And, my sons picked a pretty good year to really become huge Bears fans, because the Bears have just been a fumbling, bumbling mess of an organization for decades. It's been since 1995 that the Cowboys have not been in the NFC Championship game, but the Bears are second in the NFC of teams that with the longest drought now. 2010, now it's a lot shorter of a drought than the Cowboys, but still, just not a organization that wins a ton. And they've seemed to have finally found some magic with Caleb and Ben Johnson. I mean, that throw he had on 4th and 4 or whatever it was. He went 26.5 yards behind the line of scrimmage according to the Next Gen stats. It's the most ridiculous play and throw ever. For them to lose that game is disappointing, but what a fun, as a father, to share that experience with my kids. And we went to this Bears bar in Frisco.
Oh, sweet.
Derbyshire. It was a great environment. tons of Bears fans all going nuts, like just such a fun atmosphere and time. But to just, again, is like, I think about the sports fandom experiences that I had with my dad. I mean, that's what sports is, right? I mean, it's all of us and our connections to our fathers, to our sons. That's the tie that binds us, is our fandom and our, and I'm lucky that, if my kids were growing up in Dallas in the 90s, I'd have no shot to raise them as Bears fans in this city. But it just so happens there's an opportunity here where, if you're watching what the Cowboys are doing locally, again, if I'm competing with his friends and their fandom and their dads, it just makes it a lot easier. But I mean, ultimately, I'm happy. It sucks to lose, but like, man, was it fun to share that experience with my kid?
Absolutely. And there are so many parallels between this Bears team with Ben Johnson, innovative, offensive-minded coach, with what Caleb Williams did this season. It reminds me a ton of year one or year two, it would have been, of the Patrick Mahomes-Andy Reid marriage. Because the Chiefs had a surprise year. Nobody knew Patrick Williams was that good. He blew up. They get to the playoffs, and they lose.
Love that you just called him Patrick Williams, by the way.
Did I call him Patrick Williams?
You combined Caleb and Mahomes. I love it. Just call him Mini Mahomes if you want.
Patrick Williams. We might have something there. But the Chiefs, with Mahomes, got deep into the playoffs, and they got beat by the Patriots. They were so close, but they couldn't get over the hump, and then it just took off from there. I could see it with the Bears, especially once they shore up their defense. And age 10, man, that is like the golden era of sports fandom, because your son will carry those memories with him the rest of his life. I have core memories from 9, 10 years old, and that's when it started to sink in, and you started to further understand sports. And for me, it was Kansas State basketball and going into Allen Fieldhouse and beating number 1 Kansas in 1994. That it's like my first major sports memory, watching the game with my mom and dad, sitting there around the television, and it stuck with me ever since. Those national championship games and Final Fours, I loved college basketball. And then the MJ era of the 90s, like all that is right there. And so I think it's age 9 or age 10 for most kids that those memories will be with them for the rest of their life. And I watched the Texas Tech BYU game with my 7-year-old. And he's probably not going to remember that game like your son will remember the Bears game, or like I remember all those college basketball games and NBA Finals games. But he's close, right? And he's at the age where he finally started. He was asking really good questions about DeBonsa, and he really liked BYU and Texas Tech's uniforms. And we had a chat about that, and why is one team wearing red and the other team wearing black? And man, this guy can really shoot. And I really like JT Toppin and his shoes. And most of it was fashion related, but still, there's progress being made, and we're inching closer to that
Most
age
of it was about
9 or
fashion.
10.
I'm not sure he understood it all what was happening at the basketball court, but we'll get there.
He didn't really, wasn't quite ready to break down a show and go, but man, JT Toppin had some sweet shoes on, and I heard all about it.
All right, with James Westling, I'm Ari Tepkin. With that in mind, let's put a minute on the clock and break down what we saw this weekend on the hardwood for the Big 12. Taman Turner, our producer, T-Chains. What do you have for us, Taman?
All right, guys, we are going to start off with what happened on the Big 12. We're going to start off on Friday night, Kansas and Baylor. Friday Night Lights.
Yes, so two back-to-back great games for Darren Peterson and the Kansas Jayhawks. This game was so good for Darren Peterson that Christian Brown and many Kansas alums were tweeting about how Darren Peterson's the greatest Kansas basketball player ever. So that's where Kansas is right now. And look, based on his efficiency, it's hard to argue. Flory Badunga also had 5 blocks in this game. He was a monster. But 2 straight games, maybe it's the home cooking of Allen Fieldhouse, but Kansas is cooking right now after wins over Iowa State and Baylor back-to-back.
No, they're very much rounding into form. This was the first meeting between these two teams since 1966, with both teams unranked in the AP poll, and Kansas just blitzed them. A 19-4 run to open the game. Baylor would rally and get it close and actually take a lead at one point.
Yeah, 37-36.
Late in the first half, but Kansas opened the second half with another big burst, 15-3 run to lead by 18. Peterson, 26 points. He only missed 2 shots all game. He was absolutely filthy. And then Flory Badunga was huge, to your point. 23 points, 11 rebounds, 5 blocks. Like, this looked like the Kansas of old. The alley-oops, the and-one dunks, the three-point plays. This just reminded me of peak Kansas basketball.
All right, guys, next one. This was a bit of a shock. TCU at Utah.
Yeah, Utah finally breaks through, gets their first Big 12 win. So now just one Big 12 team without a Big 12 win. We'll get to that coming up, James. TCU dug a crater early. It was just 14-0 Utah. And TCU just was in recovery mode the entire rest of the game. Utah shot 51% overall and 38% from three.
Yeah, this felt like a trap game for TCU, going on the road against a team who is winless in Big 12 play, but Utah has been getting better, and they hung around with Texas Tech and Lubbock, and they're a different animal at home. Terrence Brown is a potential NBA player. I mean, He had 26 points in this game, 4 for 5 from 3. He was their go-to guy all afternoon. TCU didn't score for the first 6 minutes of this game. Sometimes they go stagnant offensively. Utah led 14-0. But that backcourt duo of Terrence Brown and Don McHenry is enough to keep Utah in games. They just don't have enough bigs on the glass. They get pounded on the offensive glass. Keanu Dawes is probably their best rebounder. He had a nice game, and they matched TCU's physicality.
All right, another big shocker. Iowa State at Cincinnati.
Yeah, suddenly the Cyclones, who are undefeated, have lost 2 straight and lose to a Cincinnati team that James had been 0-6 in quad one chances. Finally played a game with some urgency here. Milan Momcilovic was basically the entire story for Iowa State. Iowa State went 9 for 21 from 3. Momcilovic hit 8 of those 9. After Iowa State tied the game at 38, Cincinnati ripped off an 11-0 response. And then a late threat by Iowa State. Iowa State cut the lead again, 69-64 with about 4.5 left. And then a 14-2 finish by Cincinnati put the game out of reach.
Yeah, Cincinnati played like a team who, by the way, they've won 2 in a row now after they started Big 12 play 0-3. They played desperate, and it showed. Their pressure was fantastic. They played with pace. They were the more physical team. And this is back-to-back games for Iowa State where the turnovers have really cost them. They had 12 turnovers that led to 20 Cincinnati points, and Cincinnati had 6 threes in the first half alone. That's a lot for a team that doesn't take a lot of threes and tries to pound you on the inside. Iowa State trailed by as many as 17 in this game.
All right, a fun one in Florida. Arizona at UCF.
Yeah, surprisingly good game. Maybe not so surprising here because Arizona had to fly across the country, play a tough road game against a really good team in UCF. But Arizona wins ugly, and this is where their identity carried the day. Their defense, their points in the paint, their ability to get inside was the difference here. Koa Pete was in foul trouble most of this game. Only played 20 minutes, scored 4 points, and yet Arizona still won this game. And then Themis Folks was unbelievably good in this game. He was terrific. I just thought this came down to Arizona's ability to play inside, their defense. Like, their identity won them this game. Krivas was really good.
Yeah, long road trip, 3 time zones against a team that's really good at home, is a top 25 team in the net, was 3-1 in Big 12 play, and Arizona still led wire to wire. They never trailed in this game. To me, this was Arizona flexing their muscles in a major win that will go unnoticed, under the radar in the Big 12. And it was the game of the point guard. You know, Koa Pete goes for a season low, so Arizona's Jaden Bradley made crucial free throws down the stretch. He had the last 9 points in the final minute 17 to seal the win for the Wildcats.
All right, a tight one in Stillwater. James's Kansas State Wildcats versus the Oklahoma State Cowboys.
Yeah, this is a toughie, James. Looked like K-State was on the precipice of getting their first conference win, and then, well, they didn't. It was 3 free throws by Victorious Miller with 2.8 seconds left after a foul on a corner 3. Wildcats 0-5 in league play for the first time since 1996, 1997, James.
Yeah, it's been a minute. It has been a minute. I thought K-State played with a lot of fight in this game and looked like they wanted to be there. But an absolute gut punch. And ultimately what cost K-State, I believe, is their biggest Achilles heel, and that is they cannot rebound. They have a bunch of guards. They don't have any inside game. P.J. Haggerty hits that little runner with 49 seconds left. K-State leads by 2. And then on the final possession, Oklahoma State misses back-to-back threes, but offensive rebounds kept it alive for the Cowboys. They get it to Miller in the corner, and he gets fouled on a corner 3 with 2.8 seconds left. and he was nails to go to the foul line and hit all 3 free throws in that moment in a game in which he had struggled. He finished with 9 points, and 3 of them were those last 3 free throws. A lot of resolve for Oklahoma State.
All right, to a game last night in Houston, Texas. Arizona State at Houston.
All right, so we'll get back, I guess, to the BYU Texas Tech game. Yeah, I mean, this was a demolition job. This was just a defensive performance. I mean, incredible for Houston defensively. They won, by 30. What else are you going to say?
Yeah, Houston scores over 100 points in a conference game. When's the last time that happened? Houston's won 11 straight games. Kingston Flemings is now a consensus top 5 NBA draft pick. He had 20 points and 8 assists, and Chris Sanak had 18 points, a career high for him, the freshman. The guard play struggled for Arizona State. I was trying to find last time Houston scored over 100. I know that all 5 starters for Houston, they were in double figures, and Houston flexing their muscles at home. This game was never really close.
All right, to Morgantown, West Virginia we go. Colorado at West Virginia.
Yeah, Mountaineers controlled the glass and were extremely efficient in terms of their shooting numbers. There were a couple of runs here by Colorado to make it close. Jasper Floyd hit a layup that put West Virginia ahead for good, starting at a 13-3 spurt with 12:55 to go in the second half. And then Hunter Huff's late scoring kept it a multiple possession game through the rest of the way. So it was Hunter Huff had 9 points the final 7 minutes and 14 overall. He put this game to bed for West Virginia.
Man, West Virginia's got a roster full of all-name team All-Americans. Trayson Eaglestaff had 22 points on 9 of 14 shooting. He was massive down the stretch.
It sounds like a real Mountaineer, by the way.
Truly.
Trayson Eaglestaff is a Mountaineer.
Eaglestaff is climbing mountains in Morgantown. That's the most West Virginia name ever, and I'm here for it. West Virginia, after you mentioned Colorado, got it close with 13 minutes to go. They answered with a 13-3 run. West Virginia's quietly 12-6. They're 3-2 in Big 12 play. They're nails at home. You win your home games, you steal a couple on the road. West Virginia, I still think, could be an NCAA tournament team. They shot 52% from the floor and dominated on the glass 38-22.
All right, our final game, which was the game of the week here on TuneIn, BYU at Texas Tech.
Well, it lived up to the billing. I think the story here was what Texas Tech did defensively. A.J. Debansa was held to a season-low 13 points, only 2 points for Debansa in the second half. And then Rob Wright went for 28, but only 3 assists. So when you think about really, cutting off the head of the snake, that's what Texas Tech did defensively. I thought J.T. Toppin was phenomenal. A 30-6 run by Tech over the final 10 minutes put this one away. Impressive win. And look, you got to win your home games. You just mentioned it. So in many ways, it's not a bad loss at all for BYU, but you got to win your home games and split on the road. That's how you win in the Big 12.
Yeah, I mean, BYU led this game by 9 with 9.5 minutes to play, and those extended runs of 30-6, and then there was a 22-4 spurt in there as well. JT Toppin was unguardable. Texas Tech's spacing has gotten so much better, and Lawan Watts is their X factor.
Yeah.
6'6", 230. His dad played in the NFL. He is built like a tank. 20 points and 8 rebounds. But Toppin, man, 27 points, 12 rebounds. He's so crafty. He can go with each hand. Doesn't get to the foul line much, but it doesn't matter. And then defensively, I loved Texas Tech's game plan. We're going to take Debansa out of the game. We're going to give you layups. If it's threes and layups, you could have layups, but you're not getting threes. BYU was 5 for 22 from three-point range, and a lot of that had to do with the way Texas Tech defended them beyond the arc. Meanwhile, Tech hit 11 threes in this contest. Big win for the Red Raiders.
That's James Wesley, Amari Tepkin on this Modelo Monday. Great to have you with us today and every day here as we break down Big 12 hoops from the weekend. Plus, we'll start previewing the games this week. Got to talk about the national championship game and the long-term implications of it. Plus, is Kurt Signetti the best coach in college football right now? It's all coming up. On the way next, though, college coaches overwhelmingly are saying one thing. Does everybody agree? Plus, I guess now it's either 12 or 24. John Fanta as well on the way. It's all coming up here on a busy Modelo Monday with James Wesley, Amari Tepkin. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
After our jump, and we are ready to bring you some basketball here from the campus of the University of Houston. And the Cougars win the tip. An opening three is missed by White, but coming back to the baseline and a reset here for Utah. Another side pocket three. That's going to go up and in for Lonnie White, who had just one three-pointer.
And went down.
Collided with Otto. There's a three-pointer. Top of the arc. That's up and good. Off the hands of Grace Foster. Down for two. Down to 1.5. Second half-court heat is up, and it's good! Oh, that'll count! That's a three-pointer from midcourt. The second triple of the game. My goodness. Walker. Low block left. Swing pass. Catch. Shoot. Launch. Three-pointer again off the hands of Brooke Walker. Coming right back. Shot clock is up. 5 to go in the quarter. Down the lane, a floater around the rim and down for net one. That's a basket for Jay Jones, who's got together. That's now 17 for Utah. That's their season average per game. Down the lane, off the window, and an one for TK Pitts. Both ends of the floor for TK. In front of her, Abdur-Rahim. Shot clock under 10. White, middle of the lane, off the backboard, front iron, and down for an and one.
Come and give the hustle and the effort and the energy.
Here's Evans, hands it off to White, mid-range, got it. Lonnie White's just starting to feel it now. The Utes have played 7 road games this year. They will have picked up their 7th win and improved to 5-12 in the Big 12 Conference.
It's Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, along with James Westling. I'm Ari Tepkin on this Modelo Monday. Great to have you with us today and every day here in your home for the Big 12. Tune in. If you have not yet already, make sure to download that TuneIn app. And that's where you'll find Big 12 Radio and, of course, all of the games of the week along Big 12 Radio, including this week's Games of the Week. Oklahoma State at TCU Tuesday. Under the radar game there with two teams off to good starts to the Big 12 before, well, Oklahoma State does get the win this weekend. TCU does not. So TCU looking to rebound. That game Tuesday night, 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central on Big 12 Radio. Plus, you can also catch a fantastic game in Lubbock. Back-to-back weekends with big-time matchups in Lubbock. Houston at Texas Tech on Saturday night, 6:30 Central, rather 6:30 Eastern, 5:30 Central next Saturday. Both of those games caught right here on Big 12 Radio on TuneIn. Of course, always check us out on Big 12 Studios. Search big12studios.com to find all the platforms where you can find us, including James. I can tell you're really digging into that Designs of Sport creatine that we got. You look a little blown out today.
Little fluffy.
Little fluffy, yeah.
Fluffy. Wow.
In a good way.
Oh, in a good way.
Yeah.
It's a positive. It's a compliment.
It's you're really putting that creatine to good use, is what I'm saying.
We're just we're carb loading this time of year. I'm
Yeah.
not hitting the gym as much, man. It gets hard. It's cold. It's a lot harder to get.
You kind of do the opposite of
Gym.
most people, which is January 1, they're locked and loaded.
Nosedive. Like January and February are rough months. Peak basketball. There's a lot of games going on, a lot of shoot-arounds to attend and things of that nature. So I just figured you were, highlighting all of my insecurities.
No, not at all. In fact, I thought you were looking pretty buff, pretty spectacular. All the folks on Big 12 Studios, that's what they're commenting on YouTube right now.
I see that. Oh, that's
Yeah.
huge. That's huge. That's
Basically,
awesome.
all
Thanks,
of them
guys.
wondering what you're
Thanks,
taking.
guys. Big fans.
Wondering what
Tell you
you're
what,
taking.
Those hydration packs, have you guys tried those yet?
Yeah. Designs
They
of Sport.
are amazing.
Yeah.
And I've tried the liquid IVs. I've had all types of different offshoots of vitamin supplements that are supposed to be hydrating, and typically I can't tell the difference. Those hydration packs from Designs by Sport,
Yeah.
is that it?
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. They're amazing, legit. I think 10 in the sample size that we got, I blew through those things right away. They work, no joke. I'll take one before bed, wake up the next morning, feel very much hydrated. I'll take them before a broadcast. They truly do make a difference.
Huge.
I don't know what's in them. I will do more research and bring that to the table on the next show. But
It lists all the ingredients in the box there, Dave. Literally, all you have to do is read.
haven't gone that far. Just popping that powder, and man, they work though. Legit, very much so. Big fan.
All right, so we've got the national championship game tonight, Indiana-Miami. And it appears, and this should be no surprise for folks that listen to the show and watch the show, that college football playoff expansion is not coming in the immediate future. It certainly, the expectation was when conversation started that we would probably have expansion as early as this year. Obviously, we did not, and it looks like it's not coming for next year either. According to On3's Chris Lowe, the SEC prefers to stick with a 12-team format rather than expand to 24 teams. Basically, it sounds like the Big Ten is like, we want to go all in. 24 teams it is. And everybody else says, we're cool expanding to 16. So the Big Ten continues to sort of sit on an island by itself, wishing for 24 teams. And even as we talked about last week, James, the Big Ten may be willing to go to 16 so long as there are concessions made about an eventual 24-team expansion. Whatever, dude. Everybody else agrees this should be 16 at least, but it looks like we're going to stay at 12 because the Big Ten and the SEC can't agree.
And
Mommy and Daddy are fighting.
I give ESPN credit for setting a hard deadline, which is this Friday. That's the final date to approve changes for next season. Well, initially, that deadline was December 1st of last year, remember? And we didn't even come close.
Yeah.
So at some point, there has to be another deadline, or this is just going to continue and continue and continue. And ESPN says, hey, if it's not done by Friday, we're staying at 12, which so far we've had back-to-back incredible college football playoffs. I'm very okay with that. So we get the SEC on board for 16, and the Big Ten says, no, it's either 12 or 24. Like, it's embarrassing because it's clearly just this giant power struggle. And I know there's a lot of, issues with college football that are deeper than just expanding the college football playoff with the enforcement stuff and the NIL chaos and the transfer portal and the revenue sharing tension and all the conferences that seem to be acting in self-interest versus a league like the Big 12, which I believe the Big 12 when they say that they're acting on behalf of what's best for college football. To go to 16 would be good for the Big 12. And to go to 16, you'd probably have BYU, and I think I saw a projected bracket of what this year would have looked like, and Utah may have even actually been in as well. So that'd be really good for the Big 12. But to go from 12 to 24 does seem like a big jump. So let's keep it at 12. I mean, I'm sure a lot more will transpire in the next 4 days.
Yeah, and it's really hard to, see the Big Ten's vantage point here. If you're trying to really take a long, hard look at, maybe 24, what a 24-team playoff would mean and how disruptive it would be to the current system, right? 12 teams, the 12-team playoff already fits. A 16-team playoff, it's that may, make a difference in championship weekend, but a 24-team playoff, it's whoa, we got to pretty much start over,
right?
In terms of how you design the entire schedule. So, it makes little sense, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, James. This is just basically a power struggle between the two most powerful entities, if you will, in college football. And, it's the SEC basically saying, this is what we want, and the Big Ten is almost disagreeing for the sake of disagreement.
Exactly. It's childish in a lot of ways. I mean, the Big Ten wants a bigger playing field, more access, more inventory, more teams, all self-interest. And if you go from 12 to 24, there's no way to do that smoothly. You've got to completely overhaul a lot of things. Number one, the calendar. So the proposal to push it to 16 and maybe baby step all of the issues happening in college sports. Maybe we clean up the NIL enforcement, or we clean up, there's all this talk about not having a cap anymore, even though we just got done with the House settlement. Nobody likes it because it's unenforceable. But the calendar is the number one hurdle that I see right now that can be fixed in the immediate short term. Figure out the bowl schedule, move up the playoff games, and go from there.
Well, and seemingly related to this would be as the national championship game is going on tonight, that means a lot of the power brokers and people behind the scenes are meeting and discussing these types of things in Miami and in coaching conventions, etc. According to Ross Dellinger, prominent college officials are publicly encouraging the cap on athlete compensation to be lifted. This via Ross Dellinger. In the boldest comments yet, Miami athletic director Dan Radakovich tells Yahoo Sports it's time to, quote-unquote, open the market. The $20.5 million cap is, quote-unquote, too low, adds Notre Dame's athletic director. All right, James, so not even a year removed from the House settlement, which created the $20.5 million cap and this college sports commission, which would oversee any deals beyond that were direct NIL deals. And already it's too low and it needs to be lifted. Not even a year later, James.
So is it safe to say that when it comes to college football, the House settlement agreement and that $20.5 million, did it fix any of the problems that we're having? Did it make a difference?
No.
And I think
not even close.
Bottom line is, to remove the cap is just to remove the fear of getting caught for what these teams are already doing, building 35 to 40, some teams even maybe $50 million rosters, and doing it outside the rules because the rule book is not enforced. And, real quick, just to put a bow on the college football playoff stuff, remember, it took 5 years to get from 4 to 12.
Yeah.
It took 5 years.
Yeah.
And the Big Ten thinks we're going to go from 12 to 24 in 9 months?
Big Ten?
Big Ten, sorry. 9 months?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
I can't wrap my mind around that. But, college sports and the Ohio State athletic director chimed in. You mentioned the Notre Dame AD saying the cap is too low because the College Sports Commission, like, they can't keep up. They can no longer govern money. And just about everybody that's going to be in the conversation for the college football playoff next year, like, what percentage of those schools aren't already exceeding the cap through these third-party NIL deals that may or may not be legit? The Deloitte Clearinghouse certainly can't keep up to analyze these third-party deals, which is the cap was put in place. We keep calling it the cap, the House settlement, to alleviate all of that. And it's like these schools said, until you make us, we're just going to keep doing what we've been doing all along.
Well, it's really funny, actually, that this should not be surprising to us in the least bit, right? Like, you had a situation in which you've got, the Power 4, and more specifically, the Power 2 holds all the money, right? Power 4 more so than anybody else. Power 2 more so than anybody else. Power 4 more so than everybody else, right? So, you've got the group of 5, group of 6, however you want to call it, complaining, right? We need an even field. And that's what everybody's saying. Oh, yeah. Ohio State's over there like, great idea. LSU's like, yep, it need even. Let's do this. So everybody talks about this like it's a great, big, grand idea. And then, not even a year later, they're like, cool. I get it, Akron. Awesome, Toledo. Thanks for playing. Like, this is fun, Washington State. You used to be around, but we're not sorry. We're going to still pay our guys as much as we want. And, in fact, they should actually lift any of these rules that have us not. The people that are creating the rules are the ones with all the money. How, of course, are they not going to change the rules to benefit them not even a year removed from it?
And I love the line of the market will settle. It always has.
Of course.
The market will settle. And maybe it will if these schools that are spending this type of money aren't getting a return on their investment.
Right.
Eventually you stop investing.
Maybe.
And we've seen that at some programs. But I think that's a long way down the road. And this House settlement was supposed to level the playing field. Has it in any capacity leveled the playing field?
Well, Indiana's about to play for a national championship
Indiana,
tonight.
yes. But they're still spending
Right.
an exorbitant amount of money compared to a Miami, Ohio, Bowling Green.
Oh, we're really picking on the MAC right now.
It's a MAC attack. But the gap has continued to widen.
Yeah.
And there's nothing stopping it until collective bargaining.
Yeah.
There's no way to stop it.
That's James Wesley. I'm Ari Tepkin. Plenty more to come on this, including the national championship game tonight. John Fanta, though, one of the best in the business at college basketball, joins us next. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
That was a goal when I took over this job, is to bring the people back to watch Lady Raider basketball. Rebound pulled away by Gina Garcia, the freshman out of Barcelona, Spain. 2 Spanish guards on respective teams from the outside.
A little unfortunate it popped out of there when Texas Tech was going to get it.
You cannot leave her that wide open. Size.
Well, what could hurt you more is an offensive rebound off the foul line.
Size from way downtown knocks down the 3.
Again, just an elite talent overseas and in the WNBA.
Plays the game right. Shot clock at 5. Maupin for 3. Bailey Maupin, her 3rd three-pointer of the ball game.
Kansas State back in their 2-3 zone.
Collins hits the 3 and is fouled by Arenas. Spicer hands it off the heel. They switch. Floats it with the left hand. That was pretty by Tess Heel. Maupin forces Heel to the left. Tough shot by Heel. Got it.
Not great game against Houston.
As I said, she was hesitant. Hasn't been hesitant here in the 4th.
Good defense.
Good defense. And the rejection. But the foul by Garcia. Hasn't scored today. Hasn't only taken 1 field goal attempt. Still hasn't scored.
No, they were definitely disruptive, and that's a
Nunez for three, not going to do it, and Kansas State pulls off the upset.
Big 12 Radio. This is Big 12 Today. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios on this Modelo Monday. And so pleased to be joined right now by John Fanta, one of the best in the business at covering college basketball for NBC Sports. What's going on, John? How are you?
All right, James. Great to be with you guys on a Monday morning, and fun to be talking Big 12 hoops. What a league. What a monster of a top of the conference, and this is such a fun time of year. Great to be with you both.
No, I appreciate it very much, and let's start right there because, well, Iowa State, for me, was one of those top teams. They've lost 2 straight now. I mean, is it Arizona, Houston, and everybody else at the top?
Well, I think that when you look at this league, Arizona and Houston, are obviously they're at the top. I would include Texas Tech in there, even though when you open up, and this says it all about the league. If you open up the net rankings, Texas Tech is actually 6th in the conference in the net, but they come in at 19th in the country.
Wow.
Because this league has 4 of the top 11 teams. I wouldn't panic if I was Iowa State. I think that it's just a tough week. You're on the road. You come off the Allen Fieldhouse game, and Kansas found something this past week. We can get to them in a moment, but I thought it was a season-changing week for their team. But I would still, I would say that Arizona, Houston, and then I would actually catapult Texas Tech into that tier A after their win over BYU, because JT Toppin is going to go into the NCAA tournament and be one of the best players in the tournament. And when you combine him with Christian Anderson and Lawan Watts and their ability to defend, it's very hard to limit BYU offensively. BYU could score it in so many different ways. They have pace. They could shoot it at a high level, and they have the number 1 or number 2 NBA draft pick. The top 2 picks, I believe, will be from the Big 12 and A.J. DeBonsa and Darren Peterson, whatever order you want to go in. And so I thought that was such an impressive performance by Texas Tech. But no question. I mean, Arizona, this is crazy to say, but Arizona is not getting enough love nationally, I feel.
Yeah.
And I think they deserve more credit for all that they've done.
Well, let's touch on them because, John, you just saw Michigan over the weekend, who's the number 1 team in the net in KenPom. What was your take on Michigan, seeing them in person, and Michigan, Arizona, or Duke right now if you had to take a pick?
Well, James, my take on Michigan is that they're gigantic. They are. Adai Mara and Morez Johnson are just huge on the interior. The one thing with Michigan is if you have mobility in your front court and you front court out defensively and make them guard you, the problem is because Michigan plays drop coverage, they're going to give up some threes. And so that is the formula. Oregon was down their top 2 players, Jackson Shellstead, Nate Biddle, and Oregon was up 1 at the half. So Michigan has something. As much as they've got the 6 wins by over 40 points, and they've notched 100-plus points 6 different times, they've been a juggernaut of all sorts. It's a long season. They barely got past Penn State. Maryland gave them some issues for a Maryland team that is frankly down this year, and they lost at home to Wisconsin, who hit 15 threes. Now, you ask me, Michigan, Arizona, or Duke? Michigan is number 1 in all of the analytics, so it's hard, it's very difficult to go against them. But let me make the case for Arizona. Arizona has the balance to counter Michigan's balance, and Arizona has a better point guard. Jaden Bradley is a more complete point guard than Elliot Cadeau is. And I like Cadeau, but I love Bradley. And Bradley, to me, he has such a presence about him. Oh, by the way, Braden Burries has continually gotten better. Michigan, they've got some good wings and they have a terrifically deep team. But Burries, his ability to change the game has been on display. And Mo Krivas and Tobey Waka can both provide that size, among others, that I think lends itself to. Arizona has the bigs to compete with Michigan, and they've got one of the best players in the country in Koa Pete, who is a linebacker of sorts on the court. So it's you could go 1A, 1B. Duke, I know they lead the country in quad 1 wins. I still have some trust issues with their backcourt in the big picture beyond Isaiah Evans, but you got to give John Shire a ton of credit. The other team that should be looped in with those 3 is UConn at 18-1. That team should be looped in. Of course, Arizona went to Stores and beat them. Those 2 could meet again. And Arizona, any win in Stores is a great win. UConn did not have Braylon Mullins or Terrace Reed in that game, so they're missing 2 starting players. Those would be my top 4 teams. Excuse me, Houston would actually be over Duke for me, guys.
Yeah, and Houston's a team, I think you mentioned with Arizona kind of being forgotten. It's funny, Houston too, as a team that came as close as you can win to as close as you can to winning a national championship, returning most of those guys. And by the way, arguably the best player of this year's team is a freshman.
I think Houston, if I were to make a national championship pick, they'd be my pick today. And I'm going to tell you why. Because they're excellent today, but if you watch them game to game, they're getting better. Mm-hmm. They have real upside. Not to say last year's team didn't. It did. But part of the reason why they have upside is Kingston Flemings, Chris Sinak keep getting better and keep understanding what it takes to play at this level. And when you have Emmanuel Sharp in your backcourt, his presence is just fantastic. Milos Uzan, he might go through some different ups and downs in terms of the shot-making department. This year he's shooting just a hair over 30% from three. He's at 36% from the floor. I'm sure he would tell you, I could be better in those departments because, you look at him last year, he shot 43% from three, and he shot 45% from the field. So think about this. Houston 17-1. They beat Arizona State last night by 30. Now, Uzan had 16 in that game. What happens if Uzan starts to make more shots? And you've got Flemings, and you've got Sharp. JoJo Tugler's as good of a defensive player. He's right in the mix. I'm humbled to be on the Naismith Committee Defensive Player of the Year. I can tell you right now, he'll be in my top 3 finalists, JoJo Tugler, because he's tough as heck. And, I was loving this last night. I read this stat that Kelvin Sampson, like 40% of his wins have come off winning streaks of 10 games or longer.
Wow.
At Houston. 40% of his wins have come during winning streaks of 10 or longer.
Wow.
He is as good as anybody. He should be in the Naismith Hall of Fame. He's going to be at some point. We know he's on the nominee list. He's a finalist for induction this year, first time or whatever. They're a joy to watch. They play together. They have no egos, and they're tough as you know what. Oh, by the way, they're out for redemption.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really good points. And Uzan's hit 9 threes in his last 2 games, and Houston hits the century mark with their win yesterday over Arizona State. A 30-point difference in that matchup. We're talking with John Fanta from NBC, Field of 68, does a ton of stuff when it comes to college basketball. John, you mentioned Kansas off the top. You said Kansas is back, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
What have you seen from the Hawks?
Well, what I've seen is that Darren Peterson, when he gets cooking, he's got some Kobe in him. He is an incredible talent. Friday night, I thought Scott Drew's team came ready for the assignment, and they're trying to defend him, and they're trying to get in the lane. It did not matter. He was going to score against anybody in college basketball on Friday night in that 80-62 win over Baylor. Well, before that, you welcome Iowa State, who's tough as all get out, and will be okay. They'll be better from this week. They got a big week this week. They got a UCF team that's much improved, and an Oklahoma State team that could make the tournament, that I think is a tournament team. So what I saw from Kansas, though, I point to the win at Iowa State. They defended. They played defense. Bill Self's team hasn't had that backbone. They showed toughness. Iowa State made 9 threes in the game. They only scored 63 points. That's revealing about Kansas's ability to stop the other things that were happening, to hold Josh Jefferson to 4 of 14, to hold Taman Lipsey to 4 of 15. There's not many times where those two are combining to go 8 for 29. That's really good on-ball defense by Kansas, and I think what we're seeing is their role definition is coming into play. Now, it's hard to define roles when Darren Peterson was out. And, there was a lot of chatter, a lot of talk about what's going on, when's he going to play, what's going to happen. Bill Self's a Hall of Famer for a reason, guys. You think he's dealt with pros? He's been dealing with NBA guys for years. And they figured it out with Darren. And I knock on wood when I say this, I hope we get to see him play out the rest of the season because it's great for college basketball. But Melvin Council Jr. is a bucket. Darren Peterson is a high-level talent. And Flory Badunga has become a matchup nightmare of sorts because he's got mobility. He can fly to the rim. There's a lot that he could do to a defense. And so you got a lot to prepare for on tape. Are they the deepest team? No. But they've got a really nice 7-man rotation that's formed in Lawrence.
Yeah, well said. John Fanta, go check out the great work that John does for NBC Sports and Field of 68. John, thanks for your time, man. Appreciate it very much. Be well.
Thank you, guys. All I can say is the Big 12 is damn good, and this league is the best in terms of ability to win a national championship this season. There are several national title teams. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well said, buddy. Appreciate it, and we completely agree. Fanta will be on the call for Iowa State, Oklahoma State this week, so that should be a fun one with John Fanta. All right, James Westling, Ari Temkin, Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. So, I mean, there's some national love, right, from a guy that covers this sport at a national level, basically saying today his pick to win a national championship would be Houston. I agree with him. They've been my pick all year. I'm sticking with it. And he says the conference right now best positioned to win a national championship is the Big 12, and rightfully so.
Yeah, because you've got more than one team. I love Houston, and Arizona is the other team. I mean, the data, the metrics, the size, the matchup with a team like Michigan or a team like Duke, a veteran point guard with Jaden Bradley. Houston and Arizona are very similar, and Tommy Lloyd has seen the Houston way and has been on record saying that in a lot of ways he's tried to build his team to match that physicality. And he saw what happened with Houston's run in the NCAA tournament last year. Felt like Arizona needed to be a little bigger, stronger, more physical. So they go out and they bring in the most well-built freshman you'll ever see, very much like this Houston team. So I think there's two teams from this league that might play in the national championship if they're on other sides of the bracket. Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, no kidding.
But two that can definitely make really deep runs, and I think one of those two will win it.
Yeah, Tobey Awaka, by the way, from the Arizona Wildcats, will join us in the final hour of the show, so you're not going to want to miss our conversation with Tobey Awaka from the Arizona Wildcats. On the way next, though, let's talk with the Vice President of Men's Basketball in the Big 12 about this weekend. Brian Thornton joins us. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo here on this Modelo Monday with James Wesley and Amari Tipkin. You can hear us on TuneIn and watch us on Big 12 Studios.
Smarter with the game of basketball. Love my conversations with him.
No doubt about it, and it's Bill Fenley's Cyclones touching the ball first on the road in Stillwater. Top 15 scoring offense in the country for Iowa State, led by the nation's leading scorer, Crooks, who gets second life on this opening trip. And an offensive rebound for Hurd. Right back to Gray. The volume three-point shooter fills it up for the Cowgirls.
And that's what the Cowgirls do so well. Second chance opportunities.
Push. Gray, their top scorer, out in transition, plus a foul.
5. Literally 5.
Everybody got a crack at her. Going deep into the bench even. Hurd turns the corner for 2 more.
That's what makes Staley Hurd so hard to defend.
One of the best offensive rebounding teams in the Big 12 in Oklahoma State. And Crooks, tough one, swirls down. 13-8 at the end of the first quarter. Then Oklahoma State exploded for 30 in the second quarter. Williams to her mid-range. She thought she got fouled and took a shot across the face. In the middle of this week, we're back to Ames and then back on the road to Stillwater. Trying to snap a 4-game losing streak today. And there are the points for her.
A bit differently from what she's learned right in that notebook.
I can't wait to get her back. There's a 3 for Hurd and knocks it down. And of course, you got Olivia Miles at TCU. 4 triple-doubles leading the country. 3-ball Girardi. Got them all. Oklahoma State, 3 ranked wins last year. They're first in the book this year, knocking off number 19 Iowa State.
as he does each and every Monday at 8 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. What's up, Brian? How are you?
I'm good, guys. How about you guys?
Doing very well, thank you. Appreciate your time this morning and every morning. All right, so busy weekend. We saw Kansas win their second straight on Friday. We saw Iowa State lose its second straight. We saw Texas Tech slay the Giant and BYU at home. What stood out to you kind of big picture, Brian, from the weekend that was in the Big 12?
You named some really big moments that happened this weekend. I think one of the things that's clear is it's really hard to win on the road in the Big 12. You know, we talk about how challenging this league is and that every game matters and that every team is very, very capable. It's proven out this weekend. You know, it's just really tough to go to some of these environments and have success. You talked about Kansas winning this week against Baylor on Friday, which was a awesome environment. I actually happened to be up there with my 9-year-old son. We made the trip to Lawrence, which was great.
Nice.
But seeing Kansas win 2 games this week really helped them kind of right the ship and kind of get back on the right foot, which was big for them. And then you talked about the Texas Tech BYU game, which was probably the game of the weekend. And that was a incredible tug of war between 2 teams that are very, very capable of making deep runs in the NCAA tournament. And, you know, we can spend a little bit more time diving into that game, but that was certainly one that was fun to watch on Saturday night.
Brian, we were talking at the top of the show about Ari watching the game with his son, the Bears game over the weekend. I caught BYU and Texas Tech with my son, who is 7. You said yours is 9. So what were some of those moments like and some of those conversations like as he's taking in Baylor and Kansas in one of the most historic venues in all of college basketball?
It was fantastic. And my 9-year-old son, his name is Deuce. He's Brian Jr., but he goes by Deuce. And he loves basketball. He loves sports. He loves to compete. He says that he wants to be a college level basketball player down the road. Time will tell if that happens. But going to Lawrence was just a great opportunity for us, just as a son and father to spend some time together. I took him out of school actually on Friday. We flew up, went to both team shoot-arounds, which was fantastic. And, just for him to get the opportunity to interact with the players and the coaches and, meet some of those guys was cool. But also just watching the attention to detail, watching the way that they prepare, watching the way they practice. One of the things that we talked about after Kansas' shoot-around was Darren Peterson was the last one to leave the court. He stayed on the court probably 20, 25 minutes longer than any other Kansas player, just continuing to get shots up, working with the managers on different kind of shots that he would get in the game. And I told my son, I said, there's no secret why he's predicted to be one of the top 3 picks in the NBA draft. You can't skip the line, and it showed by the extra work that he put in.
Yeah, well said. Just from your expertise, your observing eye, did it look like Kansas has figured out a little bit better how to play with Darren Peterson this week?
I mean, they really started to click this week. 2 20-plus point wins were good. Obviously, they were at home, which helps. Darren Peterson is certainly a special talent, but it's important for them to have more time together on the floor as an entire unit. Flory Badunga was outstanding on Friday, and that's another one of the pieces that they need to continue to be good. But the more time that they can get together, the more time they can continue to gel and have that chemistry so people can understand what their roles are. When he's playing, he's a huge focal part of the team. And when he's been out, other guys like Melvin Council and others have had to really step into a leadership role and score the ball a little bit more. But it seems like they're starting to find their stride, which is good for Kansas and also good for the league.
Brian, when it comes to everything that took place on Saturday, and I know there's a ton of games during the week, but it was pretty cool to see that College Game Day is going to launch their slate in Lubbock this upcoming weekend for Houston and Texas Tech. That announcement was made public during the BYU-Texas Tech game. What does that mean for the league?
It's a great step for the league. When we started building out our schedule for this year, we wanted to create and put games on Saturdays that we felt like would have an opportunity to be on game day. We fully expect that although the Texas Tech-Houston game is the first one on game day, we fully expect that it won't be the last. We anticipate having several more cracks at game day, which is great for the league, great for the institutions, especially those that host, because they get an opportunity to really showcase their school, their spirit, their fan base, and all those things kind of rolled up in one day of excitement. But the Texas Tech Houston game has really turned into a nice rivalry lately over the last couple of years, and I'm sure this one won't disappoint.
Brian, anytime there's stories in sports world about point shaving college basketball, I mean, I think that obviously is so detrimental to the sport overall. But I'm curious if you could shed a light from a Big 12 perspective on what's going on behind the scenes, at a conference level, to sort of make sure these kinds of things aren't happening. Because obviously this is not a story that touches the Big 12, fortunately.
Yeah, we've been fortunate to dodge that bullet for the most part. It's scary, anytime that the integrity of the games is under siege, that's a bad thing. And you've seen this nationwide. There's so much money that's flowing out there, both from a gambling standpoint, but also because some of these young men and young women have a lot more money in their hands as well. And the more money you have in your hands, the more trouble sometimes you can get into. And point shaving kind of becomes one of those things. You start to owe somebody, and then you got to figure out ways to recoup that. We've been fortunate that, again, our institutions have done a really good job of staying diligent with their programs and their teams and talking to them. We have some safeguards in place. We work with a company called IC360 that monitors all of the lines and what happens throughout the course of every week. I meet with them every week, every Wednesday. We have a standing meeting where we go through the lines, what changed, were there big spikes and differences, things to keep an eye on. So they keep us very well informed. And if there's anything that they feel like is a little bit untoward, then that's something we can communicate to our institutions in advance and try to be proactive versus retroactive. And it's certainly not perfect, and not to say that we won't ever be hit by something like this down the road, but we feel like we're doing a pretty good job right now.
Talking with Brian Thornton, Big 12 men's basketball vice president for the league here on Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. There was only one road team that won this weekend in the Big 12, and that was Arizona winning at UCF. We were talking last week about some of the environments in the Big 12, but even like a Utah's tough at home. West Virginia's brutal at home. Cincinnati gets a big win over Iowa State. So what was the biggest, kind of boost from the crowd, upset, if you will, in your opinion, from the slate?
Well, I mean, I think that the obvious one is Cincinnati holding serve against Iowa State at home. They had a great environment, resulted in a court storm with that win. But I think it just gave Cincinnati a little bit of life. They beat Colorado, and then they followed that up with a huge win against Iowa State. And all of a sudden now they have a little bit of momentum. This is college. Conference season is a game of momentum. And, if you can get it, you can win 2 or 3 in a row, all of a sudden you feel like you're starting to get back into it. And in a league like ours, you're trying to get to that magic number of 9 or 10 conference wins. And if you do that, you feel like you have a more than a puncher's chance to be in the NCAA tournament.
Talking with Brian Thornton here, the VP of men's basketball for the Big 12. Curious kind of behind the scenes, like when we talk about game day being on site for the Big 12 and what a great environment that is. Like, what does that mean at a conference level? What are kind of the things that the conference can do to lean into that stuff?
Well, we try to support the institutions as best we can, but it's really an institutional show.
Yeah.
It's the institution being able to bring their students, their fans out there for the game day show. It's an opportunity to tell their story, and we want to support that as best as we can. Houston had a game day last year. Iowa State had game day last year. Again, I'm sure that we'll have other opportunities for that. It's no secret that game day likes to go to big time environments. They like to go to places where they feel like the crowd's going to be into it, the students are going to be into it, and that they can really tell the story of the student athletes that are performing some human pieces that you might not get to hear otherwise. So, anything we can do from the conference level. Obviously, the biggest thing that we've done is we tried to set up a schedule that fosters ESPN selecting some of our games for game day. But once game day happens, we'll support them with some content. We'll have some of our staff present for those games. But again, we really allow the institutions to shine.
Brian, JT Toppins had 9 straight double-doubles. all the talk nationally about all the freshmen in college basketball, and here's a guy who came back to school, could have gone off to the NBA, and he's just on an absolute tear right now for Texas Tech. What stands out about the way he's playing, and then what does that say about like Texas Tech, maybe a team that everybody's sleeping on, like a Houston, like some of these others in the Big 12 that could make a really deep run come March?
Texas Tech is a little bit under the radar, but they really shouldn't be. We knew some of the pieces that they had returning. Obviously, they lost some guys, but anytime you return a guy like JT Toppin and Christian Anderson for that standpoint, it's going to be a formidable team. And, it's taken them a little bit of time to gel. They've had some injuries that they've fought through. And I know Coach McCasland wants them to be elite defensively, so I know that they'll get there. But what JT Toppin has done in his time back is he's continued to dominate in the areas that make him special. He's an outstanding finisher inside 15 feet, seemingly can make everything. And then his second jump and his ability to rebound is first class. And then the thing that you saw against BYU is he's starting to expand his game. Anytime guys decide to come back to college, they should utilize that time to figure out, how do I make myself better? Obviously continue to do the things that make you great, but he started to expand his game a little bit. You're starting to see him handle the ball and transition. You're starting to see him do a little bit more on the perimeter from a dribble handoff and ball screen standpoint. And most importantly, he banged a couple big threes in the game, which showcases his ability to stretch the floor, which he'll have to be able to do as a little bit of an undersized post guy in the NBA. So he was certainly the best player on the floor in that game against BYU. But when you think about their big three of Anderson and Watts, that's like one of the highest scoring trios in the entire country. And in this game against BYU, they got the best of their big three in Debanza, Saunders, and Wright, who was also fantastic.
Brian, have you ever seen a freshman class like this? And, just speaking specifically to the Big 12, it's kind of insane. Houston was so close to winning a national championship last year. A freshman, maybe their best player, even with Uzan and Sharp and Tugler back. Darren Peterson, AJ Debanza, Koa Pete and Braden Berries at Arizona. And that's just scratching the surface here. The freshman class is insane.
You hit the nail on the head. I think nationally, this is maybe the best freshman class we've seen maybe ever.
Yeah.
You named off a bunch of guys right there, but, that doesn't even, really tell the entire story. Guys like Yesufu from Baylor, you didn't mention. Jock from Arizona State, who's been outstanding, you didn't mention. Killian Torrey from Iowa State has been great as well. So I think that not only is the class extremely, extremely strong at the top with, your Diabances and Petersons and Flemings of the world, but then the depth is just incredible as well. And, there's probably, 10, 12 freshmen in our league that, have the ability to be all conference level players, depending on, if they decide to move or not. But when you look at the NBA big board, we probably have 3 of those freshmen that are in the top 3 or 4 of the draft. And I would imagine by the time we get there, if those guys decide to leave, we're probably going to have 7 or 8 that are, first rounders.
Ryan, asking for a friend, how's the television stuff going with there's less games on ESPN Plus. There's more games on like CBS Sports Network and NBC Sports Network and on Peacock. And then you still have your ESPN heavy hitters and ESPN2. From what I've seen, the fans have been very positive in the way that they consume Big 12 basketball.
Well, there's certainly, as you mentioned, there's a lot of ways to digest our products right now with 5 TV partners. I think that one thing that's great is that all of our TV partners are really leaning in to what we're doing. Obviously, the fact that we're having a great year helps, but when you watch a game on CBS Sports Network or TNT or Peacock, it feels like a big time game. Kind of regardless of the matchup, those platforms are doing a great job of showcasing the student athletes. They have great talent on the games, which makes it special. When TNT has Grant Hill doing the game, Grant Hill does the Final Four.
Yeah,
so when,
right.
you have him doing a game, it feels like a big time matchup. And, whether it's Bill Rafferty doing an FS1 game or things of that nature, it just feels big. Gus Johnson was doing the the Kansas
Yeah.
Baylor game on Friday night. And I mean, he's one of the best in the business. So we have great talent. We have great TV partners. Yes, you have to look a little bit harder or pay a little bit more attention to the schedule to know where the games are going to be. But once you find that game on TV, it's going to be a great product.
Brian Thornton, VP of men's basketball for the Big 12, joins us each and every Monday at 8 Central, 9 Eastern. Always appreciate your time, Brian. Thanks so much, buddy. Be well.
Absolutely. See you guys next week.
See you, Brian.
Great to talk with Brian Thornton every Monday. He gives us his thoughts and insights into the Big 12 and across college basketball. With James Westling, I am Ari Temkin. All right, our portal season updates continue. We're working our way from the bottom of the Big 12 football standings to the top. And we start today with UCF. We'll see what UCF looks like in the immediate aftermath of the season in Scott Frost's year 2. With James Westling, I'm Ari Temkin on a Modelo Monday. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
And UCF, but today being the space game, Knights are in there. Let's see. Knights looking to try to tie it up or take the lead as Bracey off 1 foot. Bracey, the circus shot. Here's Desiree Wooten. He had the 24 points in the victory against Iowa State as the triple launched and made. Tabitha Betson downtown. Nearly 4 minutes of basketball, and the Buffaloes have turned it over 5 times in 5 minutes. A score here for Crystal Eisen as Harmon unable to come up with the 3. And a quick rebound here by the Buffaloes as the give, the go, and the score up and in for Walker. Have yet to score points here in the quarter. The go-to, catch and fire, and she's able to get it to drop. Here's Walker, gets into the corner. As a 3 ball is up, and it is good. As Mackerlane right in front of that Buffalo bench.
Which team can take better care of the basketball here in this 4th quarter?
Here is Summer Yancey, and nothing but nylon. And Leah Harmon will bring it up now here for UCF. Here's a triple. Summer Yancey bombs away. Shot clock now at 9. Nagodu open jumper from the foul line. That's her shot. And Kyala Nagodu, as here's the heave by Betson. Her shot is off. And the Knights are going to win here on the annual Space Game.
ESPN host and
Big 12 Radio, and we have made it to our portal season updates. It's a segment we're doing for 16 straight shows as we break down the latest updates to rosters following the season.
On the reg.
We're working our way up from the bottom of the standings to the top. We made our way to UCF now. The UCF Knights, decent season, year one under Scott Frost, now getting ready for year two. And, it's funny because last week we closed out with West Virginia, both sort of trying to reignite successful programs under previous head coaches with Rich Rod in West Virginia and Scott Frost at UCF. But the difference to me in the approaches throughout the offseason is evident. UCF has added small school guys with big-time production. Now, that's not the totality of their transfer portal additions, but a good portion of their transfer portal additions, James, are, again, smaller school guys with big-time production, which is a far cry from what West Virginia has done, which is kind of the opposite. Guys maybe from bigger schools that don't have as much production or haven't played as much. And as we've kind of previewed the national championship with Indiana, the success that they've had is based on bringing in smaller school guys with production. And so it feels like Scott Frost is taking the right approach to the portal in year two.
Yeah, I love this segment that we've started doing every day because what's Modelo fan rule number 47? Off-season optimism is mandatory. In all of these classes, you can highlight some really key, what should be plug-and-play additions right away. So it gives all these fan bases something to be really excited about, and UCF is no different. The transfer portal rankings, 24/7's composite rankings, has UCF with the 15th best portal class in the Big 12, only TCU at number 16 with a lesser rank. But then I deep dive their additions, and I like it. They bring in a quarterback from James Madison, Alonzo Barnett III, who's the Sun Belt Player of the Year. He was just in the college football playoff and threw for almost 300 yards and had 3 touchdowns against Oregon.
Very under the radar pickup by UCF.
Taven Jackson is out. He's transferring to North Texas, and Alonzo Barnett is in. So it's a complete overhaul at the quarterback position, where when UCF had a healthy Taven Jackson, they won some big games last year and were in some games that they weren't supposed to be in. And so for them to be in a position to make a bowl game in year one, I thought Scott Frost exceeded my preseason expectations.
Yeah. And I like what they did in terms of solidifying the position for next year by bringing in Barnett. And then they also added, a pretty good prospect in Caleb Annett, who transfers over as a true freshman from Boise State. They also add 2 quarterback signees, including Rocco Marriott, a quarterback who, so when you look at kind of the right now, Barnett looks like the immediate starter, whereas the future is interesting with Annett coming on board, and then Rocco Marriott, as well as another incoming freshman that they signed. They also, they added a big-time prospect and a 4-star recruit named Tyron Horns, wide receiver from Sarasota, Florida, who's a kind of a name to watch early that could pop. And then you add him to the mix with Josh Derry, who they had from Monmouth. Massive receiving production for him from an FCS level. Could be an instant impact guy. So, again, kind of going to that theme of, they had a running back in Landon Chambers, who's a big-time workhorse back for Central Arkansas. Yep. They had the Josh Derry, who put up big-time production for Monmouth. So, again, that's the theme here with UCF. They've added maybe smaller school guys with big-time production that could translate to success immediately.
Very much so. Looking at the skill positions, Chambers, 1,200 yards at an FCS school. He was a workhorse. And then they add Duke Watson from Louisville, who averaged 8.9 yards per carry. But he was injured. He didn't play all season. When he was on the field, he was a lightning bolt. You brought up Derry, the transfer from Monmouth. Love that move. 13 touchdowns, 1,100 yards receiving, an FCS All-American. Very similar to the type of production at the FCS level that TCU wide receiver Jordan Dwyer had when he was at Idaho. So it worked out for him. Maybe it can work out for Derry. And then Jonathan Slim Jim Bibbs from ULM, vertical threat, 15 yards per carry, all name team, obviously. And then, to round out the offense, the offensive line needed an overhaul. And again,
they've got it.
They brought in guys that were very productive at lesser schools. Brady Wayburn from UConn, a top 50 guard nationally, according to Pro Football Focus, had an elite run blocking grade. Tyler Gibson from Charlotte started the final 6 games. He graded out very high. Henry Tabinsi from Buffalo, 25 starts at left tackle the last 2 seasons at Buffalo, a MAC program. They got older, thicker, and potentially tougher up front with some of these lower-level guys transferring up.
Well, and so they also added a new offensive line coach. A.J. Blazik comes in to be the offensive line coach from Wisconsin. And then they also added Cooper Bassett, who is a former offensive line coach, to be their tight ends coach. And Bassett, his most recent jobs, Oklahoma State offensive line coach, and then before that was the Utah State offensive line coach. And in 2024, Utah State finished number 7 in the nation in total offense with 468 yards per game. So, I mean, they basically added 2 new offensive line coaches, one to coach tight ends, the other to coach the offensive line. So when you couple that with all the additions to the portal, I think the most improved unit overall in the Big 12 could be UCF's offense next year, with the production they bring in at running back, the production they bring in now at wide receiver, the production they bring in at quarterback, maybe the most under-the-radar quarterback ad in James Madison's signal caller, plus the offensive line coach, the offensive line reshuffle. I look for big things from UCF's offense next season.
I mean, you look at some of the guys they lost and some of the guys they added, and it's, to me, a net positive in terms of the guys they added. They lost DJ Black, a wide receiver who showed some explosive plays last year, but he only had 273 yards. The overhaul at quarterback, I think, is actually going to be an upgrade for them because they got a proven, productive guy. Defensively, they didn't lose a ton in the portal, and I love that they've kind of taken the approach of an Indiana where they're bringing in guys that were very productive against lesser competition at their last stop. Defensively, they add Bruno Dahl from Akron, who had 8.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks last year, was all conference in the MAC. They added a linebacker from Old Dominion who had 70-plus tackles and 9 TFLs on a 10-win Old Dominion team. They had Rashad Henry from UMass, who was a tackling machine. He had 16 in a game against Akron this year. And then they've kind of blended that with some former blue-chip guys, a former 4-star, a former 5-star from Arkansas and Florida State, a couple of edge rushers. And then in the secondary, it's been a complete reload. They brought in a kid from North Dakota State, an all-Missouri Valley Conference kid. He's got championship pedigree. They added Tay Bartram from Harvard, who was a Buck Buchanan finalist, which is Defensive Player of the Year at the FCS level. They added Camille Johnson from Wayne State, a Division II school, but he was a baller, led the country with 12 pass breakups. I see a lot of potential with this UCF class.
And again, I want to really hit the hammer over your head here with the fact that UCF went and found production in the portal. And that's what Indiana did. Not to say that UCF's about to go and win a national championship or anything, but I would say if you're going to follow a blueprint here, it feels like the right blueprint to follow is the one that Indiana has, which is find guys that are older and can produce and have produced. It's one thing to find guys that were former 4-stars or, defectees from Georgia or Ohio State or LSU or wherever, Texas or wherever else. It's another thing to find guys that have produced that will produce because they've shown they can produce. Level to level, it shows, it translates. We see that. I think so far of all the teams that we've gone through this list, and when you're working your way up from the bottom to the top, it's gonna be hard to find tons of optimism. I would say I'm most optimistic about UCF in some of in the approach they've taken, in the guys they've added, in the coaching changes they went through. There's still many, there's still a long offseason here to go through. We literally aren't in the official offseason of college football quite yet. We will be tomorrow, but not quite yet. And from what it appears, UCF to me has done a lot in terms of the portal, and I love the approach that they've taken.
And you look at, they went 5-7 last year. They had a 3-point loss to Houston. They had a touchdown loss against Kansas. They had a loss at Cincinnati. by 9. I mean, they were in a lot of games and really close to being a bowl team last year. And I think the benchmark for this year is to make a bowl in year 2 of the Scott Frost era. I think it used to be year 2 coaches before the transfer portal and NIL, you could see a huge jump. You don't get that as much anymore in college football. I think it takes more time. The bottom line is the Indianas of the world are few and far between because of the gap when it comes to these teams that are in the hunt for a college football playoff berth each and every year, and the expansion of these conferences. Going 7-5 with a second-year head coach is a really good benchmark. And you look at Dwayne Thomas should be back at receiver. Dylan Wade, the tight end, his backup, Kylan Fox, transferred out because Dylan Wade was that good. He's going to be on the field every snap. What they've done at quarterback, bringing in a kid that just played in the college football playoff, I don't know how he slipped through the cracks, and they must have given him a bag because that is a really big-time player who's got over 5,000 career passing yards, rushed for double-digit touchdowns just a season ago at James Madison. And James Madison was a really good football team. They were undefeated before the college football playoff. The dude's a winner. I cannot wait to ask Matt Murschel about the running back situation because with eligibility, who's back, who's gone, Miles Montgomery and Jaden Nixon, neither of those guys are listed as departures, but do they have any eligibility? They were seniors last year, but I don't even know what that actually means when it comes to college football and eligibility rules, so we'll get some clarification on that. If they lose both of those guys, that'll be an overhaul that maybe is a net minus because they were really good. But outside of that, man, I see upticks at just about every position across the board.
Yeah. Portal season updates. Matt Murschel of the Orlando Sentinel joins us next with the college football offseason in full swing for the Big 12. We get you caught up on everything going on around the Big 12 with all these teams. UCF is our focus today, and Matt Murschel of the Orlando Sentinel joins us next to break down his thoughts on what UCF has built so far this offseason. With James Iamari, this is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Against the Knights, and West Virginia tries to bounce back after the loss against TCU. A lot of transfers, newcomers in for Mark Kellogg's group this year. Inside, and Wheeler gets that to go. Up and over the defense. She's a long heave out to Johnson. And now Makaleski lines it up for 3, and that's good.
Offense, forcing West Virginia to collapse their defense and then kick it out or to kick it to cutters.
Maya Bird misses, but Mary Carden is in there to clean it up. Both Carden and Bird on their defense late in the game. You can talk about the Perry shot all you want, but there's some good defense to keep Cincinnati in the game.
Sometimes as a player that can be too much, but for West Virginia it's paying off.
And that's a nice move for Harrison, calling her own number inside. She's made a couple in this game today.
The sharpshooter transfer, second three-point shot in West Virginia.
Long rebound grabbed by Torrance, her first of the game. Bird Euros and lays it in. She's banged up after coming down with that rebound, trying to collect herself in the corner. Good play to find Wheeler down low, up and in through traffic.
What great. Cincinnati late to get back, matched up on defense.
And Thomas was calling for it.
With so many players coming in and out from injury.
Perry splits the double and gets to the rim. A valiant effort to come back for the Bearcats, but not enough at the end. West Virginia wins 84-76. Ninth
cooking with Scott Frost in Orlando, Matt. And, we were just talking last segment as we broke down kind of the moves throughout this offseason. And, love the approach in adding a bunch of guys from smaller schools with big-time production. And let's start with quarterback. Maybe the most under-the-radar acquisition so far has been the quarterback acquisition by UCF.
Yeah, very much. Alonzo Barnett III, comes over from James Madison, who led the Dukes to the college football playoff this year. UCF was able to sign him. I think he provides an instant upgrade to the quarterback position for the Knights. Here's a guy who's a 2-year starter, had an opportunity probably to look around and maybe go elsewhere, but decided that UCF was kind of the best fit for them. And for the Knights, and Scott Frost, this is bring in a guy that they feel like can maybe elevate their offense, something that really struggled last year towards the end of the season. They feel like Barnett has a lot of the tools that can fit in well with what Scott Frost wants to do with his offense. He's a strong pocket passer. He's very accurate. He's got good legs that he can run. He can scramble the pocket. He can also do quarterback runs if they need be. One of the things that stood out to me the most is he doesn't turn the ball over a lot. And I think that's something that's going to be very key for what they want to do offensively. So I thought that was probably the home run cornerstone kind of move that they made throughout this portal class. And I think the thing that really started things off for them as they move forward.
What other schools were in the running for his services, and how did they get connected with him? Is there any tie to anybody on staff, or did UCF just say, hey, this is our number one guy, we're going to offer him whatever it takes?
Yeah, I think for UCF, they had a short list. We haven't had a chance to sit down and speak with him yet. They're still kind of wrapping up their class. But, everything I talked to, Barnett's high school coach, and, he talked about some of the things that he does well. And one of the things, I'm sure UCF did is they zeroed in on certain guys. Let's be honest, with the transfer portal and the market out there, it's difficult at quarterback. You're going to probably spend a lot more money than you probably maybe have wanted to, or it's going to be one of your top expenditures going into the next season. So UCF knew they needed to upgrade the quarterback position. They probably, I'm sure, like any team like the NFL does with a draft board, they probably had their free agency board. They probably went through and looked at who they felt like they could get at a reasonable price. And Barnett fell in that group, and I think he also fits, like I said, what Scott really wants to do. He wants a guy who can not just throw the football, but a guy who can use his legs a little bit, gets out of the pockets. Barnett's high school coach told me that, he's a guy that doesn't necessarily want to run all the time, but he prefers to be in the pocket, but he can run. In fact, James Madison used his legs heavily in the last 2 years. So it's something I think that Scott will take advantage of. And so I think he fits kind of a lot of the parameters that UCF was looking at, and one of those being it was an affordable choice to bring in. And I'm sure, like I mentioned, they probably spent a lot more money this year than they probably did in the last couple of years when it came to quarterback position.
Interesting. Curious for kind of your thoughts beyond Barnett of who the best, most important acquisition would be. Landon Chambers from Central Arkansas was a 1,200-yard back, and Josh Derry from Monmouth's a guy, again, small school guy that produced. Defensively, they got some guys that produced at a big-time level. Like, Matt, of all the guys beyond Barnett, who stands out to you?
Well, I'm going to say something that's going to sound weird. I think it's a guy that they already had on the roster. Horace Lockett was a defensive tackle that had shown a lot of promise, early last year, and then went down, missed the rest of the season with an injury. And everyone felt like Horace was going to be back, and then surprisingly, he jumped in the portal. And, I think that was a big concern, especially considering John Walker, who was one of their highest, rated recruits that they'd ever signed, decided to leave and go in the portal and move on to Ohio State. I think Lockett signing and then deciding to come back out of the portal and re-signing with UCF, I thought that was a huge move because I think it also solidified their idea of what they wanted to do defensively. That kind of maybe helped to get some pieces going for them. Lewis Carter was another guy who they wanted to make sure they got back at linebacker. I think keeping some of these guys, and then, you can start building around that. You talked about defensively. I thought they did a really good job of adding some depth, in the secondary. They brought in some guys that they felt with maybe they could help them out. They already had 4 starters that they had re-signed from their last year's team, but they wanted to bring in some depth. They brought in guys like Ty Bartham, who was a guy who that Bartram, excuse me. He was a guy from Harvard that had a really good career in the Ivy League. You know, they had to rebuild the defensive front a little bit. They brought in Bruno Dell, Brad Gurley Jr. They brought in a couple guys that, as you mentioned, were maybe at the top of the G5 or the FCS kind of schools, but they're hoping they can move in and transition to the Power 4 leagues as well. So they've done a lot of things, I think, to build up depth. And as you mentioned, it's kind of a good strategy where they're not necessarily shoving all their chips in the middle and saying, we're just going to go after one or two elite guys. They want to make sure that they're using their money wisely.
Matt, you mentioned the running back transfer from Central Arkansas. Where are the backs that were on the roster last year? Are they out of eligibility, Nixon and Montgomery? And what does the running back room look like?
Yeah, Nixon and Montgomery are out of eligibility, so they left. So that really kind of had the room kind of short, really, at some point. They had two guys that were injured, and Taven Swint and Stacey Gage, and they missed most of last season. And so Swint is coming back, but Gage left, went in the portal, and he just recently committed to LSU. So, UCF really needed to build up, their running back group. They had Ajaman Ade, which they really liked last year, played really well towards the end of last year at times. Kind of was forced into the role once they had some guys go down with injuries, and then they went out and said, okay, we got to get some guys through the portal, so they brought in, Landon Chambers, they brought in Duke Watson. Duke Watson's a guy very similar to Jaden Nixon. He's a guy that can make people miss. He was hurt a little bit last year. They hope to get him back 100% healthy. They brought in some young high school guys. They got a guy in Kaj Baker and Arthur Lewis IV that are high school guys they believe will kind of maybe step in. Maybe not going to contribute right away, but guys that they feel like are going to have to kind of help out maybe here or there. So this was an important part of them. I think, quarterback, running back, offensive line, and defensive front were probably their main concerns. And they were able to get some guys they felt like maybe filled some of those needs.
Curious, Matt, what are reasonable expectations for this team and this program heading into year 2 for Scott Frost?
I think reasonable is, they want to be bowl eligible. I think they haven't been to a bowl game in the last couple of years. And, 5-7 was about where I thought they would be at last year. So, and for them to finish that way kind of was where, on track where they were going to be at. I think this year they expect to take that next step. They want to get to maybe 6 or 7 wins. I'm not necessarily saying I never believe that someone's going to win a championship unless they, build around those pieces. But I think that they've got enough now. This roster is better. Where they need to make the biggest improvements over the last 2 or 3 years is on the offensive line and the defensive front. I think every team, that's their kind of focus. But for UCF, to me, their offensive line was good last year, but it wasn't great, and it hasn't been great. And they need to get itself up to, being in a Power 4 conference. And I think so. They've got a new offensive line coach in. They brought in some pieces that they feel like are going to help them out. They got to replace 4 starters, and they've got to figure out how to do this. So, to me, I think 6-7 win frame is where I think they'd be good at. Again, year 2 with Scott, he didn't have to replace as many players. We all forget that last year they brought in, I think it was 69 or 70 newcomers. It's nowhere near going to be that way this year. I think that's a good sign for them. They're starting to keep some guys around and build a foundation there. So it's going to take that logical next step was, okay, get to be bowl eligible, maybe be contenders in some of these games and surprise some teams, and maybe you'll be right there. But I don't necessarily believe they're going to make that jump from non-bowl eligible to contending for the Big 12. But we've seen a lot of other things happen over the last couple of years.
Yeah, so you're not calling that they're next year's Indiana?
No, I'm not calling their next year's Indiana. I think they've done a good job with some of the needs they had and everything like that. The hardest thing with the portal guys, and I'm sure you're going to hear this from a lot of teams, is you got to make sure that the fit works. You talk about building culture. That's the thing that Scott did last year, I thought, really well, was the culture was really good in this program. Even when they struggled at times, the players never seemed to be down. They all seemed to be in it. They wanted to try to play to the very end. I just think they ran out of gas, and they had so many injuries. The quarterback position was decimated by injuries. And if they can get healthy and they get guys in there that are maybe the next step up, then I think then they can make a solid run at things. The Big 12 is always going to be a fun league. We've seen that the last couple of years. I think you're going to see different teams be at the top. Texas Tech will be there. We know that. BYU will be there. But someone else is going to probably take that next step and emerge. And I think that's where UCF wants to feel like they can take that next step.
One of the things we haven't yet talked about with you is the new offensive line coach. They added a new tight ends coach who's been an offensive line coach. So, do you expect to see improvement there based on the additions through the coaching staffs?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, let's not forget that this is a team that I think it kind of got lost a little bit last year. UCF lost its offensive line coach who passed away, in during the season. I mean, so they had to kind of take two guys who were assistants. They brought in Danny Hope, was a former, was a friend of Sean Clark who passed away. They brought in Danny Hope to kind of help out. He came out of retirement to kind of come in the middle of the season to help out the group. They also had, they also had an assistant that was kind of working under Sean Clark that kind of helped with that as well. They didn't have an offensive line coach for pretty much most of the Big 12. In fact, I think, for the whole Big 12 season. So it's a challenge, for that. And Scott Frost talked about it after the year that, it was tough for them, and it was tough for Scott because him and Sean were very close. So I think bringing in someone now and trying to have them take over the job. AJ Blazek is a guy who has, potential, his talent. He worked with, Kirk Friends, Iowa, so he kind of understands exactly what needs to happen, building good offensive lines in the Big Ten. He was at Wisconsin, so this is an opportunity for him to come in and try to rework this offensive line, to get it to be a little bit solid. They brought in Will Johnson to be their new defensive backs coach. I think he's going to help them out again. They brought in Connor Bennett, who comes in as tight end coach. He's going to take that role off of Steve Cooper, who was the offensive coordinator. That gives Cooper more time to kind of focus on the offense. So I think Scott's again tweaking and doing things to the coaching staff to make sure they're ready to handle another season.
Matt, you said last year he brought in like 70 new players and that number is going to be much lower this year in terms of roster turnover. Can you put that more into perspective? Like, is it going to be half that? And what does that mean for player retention and just kind of him finding his footing at UCF?
Well, at this point, since the portal window closed, they lost 34 players to the portal, and they brought in 28 transfers, plus they had 13 or 14 high school guys. So they're bringing in, it's what, like over 40 guys, newcomers coming in. That's a lot less than what they had to do last year. And like I said, they had a lot of retention and re-signed a lot of guys, especially key guys that really kind of they felt like they needed to have coming back. Dylan Wade, who was one of their top tight ends, one of their top receiving tight ends. He was the guy that recommitted to come in. Wade, they got in a guy, Dwayne Thomas, who was one of their top receivers. He's a guy that recommitted to come back here. I mentioned Horace Lockett. Horace Lockett coming back in at tackle. He was a big piece of what they're trying to do. They had 4 starters on their secondary that decided to come back and re-sign. So that was kind of key for them. They didn't have that advantage last year. It was almost a whole new roster that Scott had to deal with and kind of rebuild off of that. Now he has the foundation. He could say, okay, now we can just work around that. And I think because of the way the portal works, because of the way revenue cap is, you only have so much money to deal with. And so I think Scott was just trying to use the money wisely. And now if this can continue, that trend can continue, then maybe you sign more and more, and that transfer portal window ends up being maybe anywhere from 30 to 35 every year. You're not necessarily having to go out and rebuild a roster from scratch. And so I think Scott's learning that. I think they understand exactly what they need to do. And it's just going to be key. I just think it's just going to take time because, again, he's been out of coaching for, 3 or 4 years, after what happened at Nebraska. And I think he was just trying to get his footing in what is going on right now in the world with the portal and revenue sharing and things like that.
Yeah, well said. Scott, Matt Murschel, the Orlando Sentinel. Always fun to visit with you, Matt. Be well, man. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Matt.
Matt Murschel joining us here, breaking out his thoughts on UCF football in our ongoing series, taking a deep dive into all of these teams in the portal season, James.
So I got my question answered about Miles Montgomery's not back next year at running back. Jaden Nixon is not back because they're out of eligibility. But I like what they've done to replace those guys with a dual-threat quarterback, with the FCS All-American from Central Arkansas, and then I think UCF fans should be really excited about Duke Watson, who's the transfer from Louisville. He didn't play a ton. He saw action in 7 games. He had almost 200 yards and averaged a blistering 8.9 yards per carry. He was second on the team, in rushing yards with 597 and 7 touchdowns. Even though that was 2 years ago. Okay, so 2 years ago he was really productive. Dealt with an injury last year, only played in 7 games. But out of high school, he was a 4-star prospect, had ridiculous numbers. And then he brought up Swift. I think Tavon Swift is the kid's name, who was the number 1 recruit for UCF last year out of high school. was hurt, didn't play much last year, preserved his red shirt, but he's a highly touted prospect. So my point is, I think at running back, even with the departures, they're going to be just fine next season within that Scott Frost offense that loves to run the football.
Yeah, and I'm extremely optimistic about this team, and it starts with the offense. The fact that, they've added one of the most productive quarterbacks, running backs, wide receiver tandem. I mean, we talk a lot about what Oklahoma State did with Eric Morris basically rebooting the band at quarterback, wide receiver, and running back, and yet UCF's very underrated, adding James Madison's quarterback, adding a 1,200-yard rusher, even if it's at the FCS level, and then a 1,000-yard receiver as well. And that's just the starting point. The offensive line should be dramatically improved. The offensive line coaches is going to be better. I think there's a lot of reasons for optimism for Scott Frost year 2.
And I think, they get this quarterback from James Madison. The way I see it, the reason why he's not at a high level Power 4 school is because he's 5'11". 5'11" quarterbacks don't get recruited by Georgia, Alabama, North Carolina, etc. But that doesn't mean he can't be a productive quarterback. I mean, his play speaks for itself. So it's a tremendous fit in terms of production. You're going to be the guy, a step up in competition, but he showed that against power conference opponents, this will be his third year as a starter. He was the starter the last 2 seasons at James Madison, double-digit wins both of those years, capped by this past season, an undefeated regular season in conference championship game. I still think, despite his size, that doesn't matter. He's a dude.
Yeah, well said. All right, that's James Wesley. I'm Ari Tepkin. That is our UCF portal discussion. Tomorrow, we're talking a little Kansas football. Kansas had some big additions, including the quarterback position, over the weekend, so we'll touch on Kansas in our portal season updates tomorrow. With James Amari, it's Big 12 today. And remind us again, Modelo, the full-time fan rule number 41, is it?
I believe it was, yes, that sounds right. Off-season optimism is mandatory.
Thank you. All right, on the way next, let's get back into the headlines from the Big 12 in this weekend that was. Plus, we're talking national championship. It's all on the way next here on this MLK Day. With James Wesley, I'm Ari Tepkin. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Martin's got to do a good job of taking care of the ball.
And another great look at a 3, and Shear is able to pay dividends this time, knocking down the triple. No doubt. All 8 of her points in the second half. Several key buckets in the fourth quarter. She doesn't play like that. I tell you, TCU doesn't win. And Olivia Miles has the assist goggles on early. Welch unable to hit. Shear pulls down the rebound, sees Miles flying ahead for 2. Everybody had either 2 or 3 points to that point. Shovel inside, and somehow Blessing Adebanjo able to finish through traffic to give her 6.
For Arizona.
Wonderful point. Miles and Suarez a combined 1 of 11 from the floor, and a finish inside by a Joel Magat, and 1 against Kennedy Basham. TCU doesn't typically give up much more than 30% to opponents. Olivia Miles attacking downhill with some purpose, hitting, and 1. What a start to the second half. Again, they blitz Miles. Miles stepping back for 3. You bet! Cornfield. Blitzed. Sugapong. Late in the shot clock. Goes underneath, and the finish for Blessing Adebanjo. And the foul. High pass out to the corner. Bigby gives it up to Miles. Miles dancing back. Now repenetrating against Francois. No look. Feeds Silva. Yes! Sheffy out of the corner for 3. Coming up short, but Hunter gives him another chance. Her twist in the lane. Suarez with the follow.
A good showing here in Fort Worth, but overpowered by number 10 ranked TCU.
Yeah, they led the Horned Frogs at the half. The first team to lead Mark Campbell's squad at the half in 2 seasons at home.
talk big picture, shall we? Big picture, Big 12, men's hoops, big weekend, big week ahead, lots of bigs. Big, 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 big.
I don't do small pictures. I only do big.
It's true. Very true. James Westling on social at James Westling. You can get me on social at RE Sports. So great to have you with us today and every day. And you're home for the Big 12. Tune in and Big 12 Studios. Okay, big picture. Takeaways from this weekend.
Well, Texas Tech's a lot better than people thought. That's probably the biggest headline for me. The fact that they were down by 9 with 9.5 minutes to go in what was, it didn't feel like they were down by 9. They were still very much in the game. Then they go on this huge run. They limited BYU from beyond the arc. BYU only had 5 threes. JT Toppin is in the conversation for National Player of the Year. He's the reigning Big 12 Player of the Year, and we just forgot about him because Texas Tech lost a few games in the non-conference. Very similar to what happened to Houston a season ago. So that makes the league even stronger when we talk about those, those top 4 teams. You throw Texas Tech in the mix. Then you throw Kansas in the mix, who's starting to figure some things out. And all of a sudden you have 6 legitimate, I don't know that I'd say title contenders, but 6 teams that I think could make a run at a Final Four. Definitely an Elite 8. And there are teams from this league that are national championship caliber teams. Houston, Arizona, I think are in a league of their own. Iowa State's faltered a little. How does Iowa State respond? That's another thing. This is what we saw last year with Iowa State. Hot start, and then the injuries started to pile up. Well, this year, for the most part, they're relatively healthy. Tamin Lipsey missed a little bit of time, but not an entire game or anything like that. So how does TJ Otzelberger get them to bounce back and respond? This week's a huge week for them.
Yeah, no, agreed completely. And I'm with you. I think, just big picture, there's a lot in terms of the takeaways from this weekend, but Texas Tech, getting arguably the best win so far of the young Big 12 season. Here's what Grant McCaslin said about the growth of his team so far this season.
Our team, and I think you can point to obviously how Christian and JT early in the season, we kind of were feeling like the offensive part was going to save us at times, and we had, I take us back to the Illinois game where we're on the road and we could not guard. We could not get a stop, man. And no, it wouldn't matter what happened we were scoring, but we could not get stops. And I think our guys have really made a commitment from that time. And now we're seeing the grit that you have to finish games. It's all about how you compete. I mean, our guys go out on halftime and they yell defense. They're in the huddles. They're actually communicating what we need to do as the game changes. And they popped us a few times. BYU they run great stuff. And they got us a couple times on some corner screen ins. And they got us on some drive angles. And what I love about JT is JT was the one that messed it up. And he comes over there and he is so upset. He used to be upset at missing free throws. Now he's upset about not playing good defense. That shows you where we've come. How far we've come. And I'm telling you, JT's a worker, man. And the thing that's added to this is JT's not only just working, now he's fighting for us to be great defensively. And that, to me, is where our team's making the biggest jump.
Yeah. Watching that game and then hearing Grant say this, you could tell JT Toppin, he's not a big talker, but when he talks, people listen. And, look, I think what Texas Tech's win over BYU says is, number one, it's tough to win on the road. So credit to Texas Tech for holding serve on their home court. But two, that it's Houston and Arizona, and then that second tier is probably, at this point, Iowa State, BYU, maybe Texas Tech, and maybe Kansas are a part of that as well. So I think, big picture, this shows that maybe there's more teams at the top of the Big 12 than we originally thought at the first week or first months of the season.
Yeah, I mean, Texas Tech with that win jumped from almost middle of the pack to they're now in third in the Big 12 with a 4-1 league record. And they lost early in the year against Illinois. They got pounded by Purdue. They weren't guarding anybody at that point in time, and that was way back in November. And then they started to get better. They had a major, high-profile, arguably one of the best non-conference wins in the country when they beat Duke. They've given Duke their only loss. Duke is 17-1. Their only loss is to Texas Tech. And Texas Tech, since that game, is top 5 in the country in Torvik and KenPom and all the analytics. They're playing elite basketball, but because of those early season losses and the manner in which they lost, they've had to work their way back up the rankings and all these nets and KenPoms and Torviks collectively over the entire body of work. But they're playing at a very high level. And JT Toppin's had like 4 or 5 blocks each and every time out in his last 3 games. Like, he's just been a monster as a rim protector, which is an element of his game that very much gets overlooked because of what he does offensively, because of what he does on the glass.
Yeah, and look, if Texas Tech's win was not the most impressive in the Big 12, maybe it was Cincinnati's. The Bearcats on the precipice of disaster, 0-6 start in quad 1 games, but they get a win, handing Iowa State its second straight loss. Here's what Wes Miller said following this huge win, and maybe his biggest as the head coach of Cincinnati.
What did it mean to see the kids storm the floor? You've had to put up with some stuff. I was still out there when you walked to the radio, and you got some cheers. It's been a while. So what does it mean?
I'm happy that our fans get to experience, Cincinnati basketball playing at the level that it's supposed to tonight. And so I'm pleased for everybody there, our fans, our students, the people that are invested in our program. It's so neat to see them. They deserve to feel it. I want our players, our fans, our former players, again, the stakeholders in this program, I want them to really enjoy this. That joy, we talked about that in our department a lot. Like, we got to find the joy in what we're doing as a department. It was great to see that for the whole Cincinnati fan base and stakeholders in our program tonight.
All right, so great stuff there from Wes Miller. On the other side, here's what Iowa State head coach T.J. Otzelberger had to say following their second straight loss.
Yeah, I think for all of us, we told our team in the locker room, when you sign up to play in the Big 12, you're playing the best league in the country. Like, everybody's either had adversity, going into adversity, or coming out of it, right? And so we're fortunate to win our first 16 games. Truthfully, didn't have a lot of adversity during those stretches. And, now we lose 2 in a row, right? And you go on the road and you play teams that are very well coached and urgent and desperate to win a game, and they do. So I think more than anything, what our team needs to do, this is the time of the year where, everybody, there's a lot of things out there that can be distracting. And what we need to do is double down on the men in that room that we have, of the character, the work ethic, the talent, the ability, and how we, can go out and play for each other. And we got a lot of great basketball ahead of us this year. I mean, we're just getting started on league play. And we've had more games on the road than we've had at home. So I'm eager to get back to the practice court. I know our guys will have that same mentality. And, again, my job as a coach is to make sure that we become the best version of ourselves, not based on what anybody else defines for us, but what we define for ourselves. And I've never had more confidence in a group to do that than what I have in our group this year. So excited to see where we can go as we continue to work.
Yeah, I think, James, when you look at this conference, you can't let one loss turn to 2. That's the biggest issue, is rebounding after tough losses. And, Iowa State with 2 losses. With 2 losses this week, you could argue one's bad because Cincinnati hadn't won a quad 1 game, but losing at Allen Fieldhouse, that's no slight. I think now it's about how does Iowa State regroup?
Definitely. And I think, Cincinnati is a very difficult place to play. And Cincinnati is elite defensively. They're top 4 in the league in scoring defense and field goal percentage defense. They guard the arc at a high level. Their problem is they're not a great shooting team, worst in the conference from beyond the arc and just overall field goal percentage. But they pounded Iowa State on the glass, and Cincinnati does that to a lot of people. Their only Achilles heel has been they can't make shots. Well, Jizzle James has been with the team now 8 games. He's one more layer to their shooting ability that I think can really help them. And in the 8 games he's played, sure, they're 4-4, but they're 4-4 with a much tougher schedule than before he rejoined the team in December. They took Houston to the wire, lost by 7. Actually had a lead in the second half of that game. Lost by 2 at West Virginia. That's a tough place to play. Lost by 1 at UCF. And then near double-digit wins back-to-back against Colorado and Iowa State. Cincinnati is a team that has a lot of potential to maybe be the team to watch in terms of a breakthrough down the stretch.
Yeah. right,
because of his addition, and then they're massive on the front line.
I mean,
Baba Miller and Chom, they just hammer people on the boards.
We've been waiting to see this all year. And
last 3 years.
It's finally breaking through here, certainly this year. The other one has got to be Kansas. 2 straight wins now for Kansas. Maybe it's the home cookie of Allen Fieldhouse, or maybe they figured some things out. Here's what Bill Self said following their second straight win, this one Friday night over Baylor, on how they made sure not to be a one-hit wonder.
Because everybody's been patting these guys on their back because they did something on Tuesday. We haven't done it. I mean, we haven't done anything. It's a long season. But I didn't want to be a situation where, that needs to become the consistent effort, not just a one hit.
And Kansas didn't shoot it well. I mean, sure, they shot 51% from the floor in the box score, but they couldn't make a perimeter shot. Kansas was 5 for 17 from 3, 29%. But they got into the paint. They attacked the basket. They made 11 of 13 from the foul line. They won the rebounding. That's why they won the game. And I do think, Bill Self has something now with Kansas, because Flory Badunga, 23 points, 11 rebounds, 5 blocks. He was just a monster on the interior. And Baylor's a bigger team. They have long guards. Cameron Carr is listed at 6'5", but he has a standing reach of 8'10" and like a 7'4" wingspan. It's insane. So Baylor plays much bigger on the perimeter than what they look like on paper, and Kansas took it to them. Peterson was 11 of 13 from the floor and had 26 points, got anywhere he wanted. So Kansas didn't settle for threes. Those are signs of a well-coached team where it's starting to click. We're not knocking down our perimeter shots. Let's get to the rim. Let's win the battle of the boards. Let's value the basketball. KU had only 4 turnovers in this game. That's another key stat to look at, because it means you're valuing your possessions and getting the most out of them.
Big 12 today, Big 12 radio. All right, so completely agree with you there. Great stuff. And big picture for the Big 12, I mean, we knew how good this conference is at the top, but here's John Rothstein from CBS Sports talking from a national level at how good this conference is overall.
And as of today, the Big 12 has the best chance to have the most of the top 16 protected seeds on Selection Sunday. I'm going with the Big 12 by the slimmest of margins.
Yeah, and I think you could make a case for any of the three. I think if you're talking about the teams at the top, it's the Big 12. If you're talking about a mixture of depth with elite teams in Michigan and Purdue, you could say the Big 10. And from a depth perspective, you could go with the SEC. I'm going to go Big 12 because I like the teams that they've got that can make a run to the Final Four, but you could make a case for any of the three, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm clearly a tier guy. How many teams do you have that are championship caliber? That's the top tier. The Big 12, clearly the best in that regard. What about the middle? How many of those teams potentially get to the tournament and could be second weekend teams?
Sure.
The Big 10 is better there in the middle. All of these conferences are bad at the bottom.
Yeah.
So, therefore, I give the nod to the Big 10 because it's almost as good at the top as the SEC and better in the middle. So I give the nod to the Big 10 as the top conference right now.
All right, so Rothstein mentions the Big 12. Clark Kellogg, we heard there, not Clark Kellogg, excuse me, the former Ohio State guard whose name's escaping me right now.
Steve Smith? No.
No, who we just heard his voice. He does the national championship game. At any rate, he thinks the Big 10. So yeah, I mean it's for me. I think we just heard it there at the end, in that at the top, the strength of the conference being, national championship caliber. I mean, Arizona and Houston are right now favorites to win a national title. I mean, if there's 3 favorites, it's 2 of them are Big 12 schools. And then I think you can make a case that if Texas Tech figures some things out, Kansas, they start to figure some things out, along with BYU and Iowa State, the top of the Big 12 looks to be even further than maybe what we expected initially.
Totally agree, especially when you look at, and I keep circling back to Duke's one loss is to Texas Tech, a team that until their win over BYU wasn't in the conversation as being one of truly the best teams in the Big 12. So when I look at how close BYU took UConn down to the wire, how Kansas, when it was a shell of itself, had UConn on the ropes, the wins that Houston has in the non-conference. And now that we're into league play, that's all we can go off of, right, is what these teams did in the non-conference. But and it's all subjective. I see the angle that all of these guys are taking. But give me the teams at the top in the Big 12. And the Big 12 is still the teams in the middle or even the bottom are underrated when you look at some of their non-conference wins and how difficult it is to win on the road in this league. The league is in a really good spot. I mean, even like BYU, a lot of people probably didn't catch that game because it was super late at night, but it passed the eye test, even in a BYU loss. Like, that wasn't a bad loss. DeBonsa showed his skill set. They've got depth on their front line that's underrated. It wasn't a bad loss for BYU. They led by 9 with 9 minutes to go. Like, if you watch the Big 12, it's the best league, in my opinion, no doubt.
That's James Westling. I am Ari Tepkin. This is Big 12 Today, and one of the best teams in this league we didn't even hear from in this segment is Tommy Lloyd and the Arizona Wildcats. Tobe Awaka, one of the stars of Arizona basketball and one of the few returning producers from last year's team, joins us coming up in about 30 minutes from now. You're not going to want to miss Tobe Awaka from Arizona joining us here in about 25 minutes from now. We'll go with that. 25 minutes from now, we'll hear from Tobe Awaka. All right, the national championship games tonight. Let's talk about it, huh? It's Indiana, for the sake of the blue chip ratio, going to win a national championship and have a breakthrough season as a 8.5, 9-point favorite. We'll talk big picture what this means to the Big 12 plus 12 or 16 or 24. That's all coming up next with James. I'm Ari. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
At the top of the conference, BYU loses the opening tip, and the Bears control. Johnson hands off to Van Geitenbeek. Good two-man game right there on the give and go, and a beautiful pass.
To be able to create those extra opportunities, the possessions extended.
Bella Fauntleroy. What a tough move. Some good footwork to sneak through. Benali running the break. Gibb in transition. Good. Delaney Gibb. He hands out to Fauntleroy into traffic. And another steal by BYU. Cannon. There's the Euro step. Baylor basketball still in front by 10. BYU's been able to get to within 8 a few times. And now, just like that, Talia Scott pushes it back out to 13. It's Fauntleroy. Poked away by Barber for a moment. Scott, step back three. Come on! Oh my goodness! Perhaps a little heat check. Delaney Gibb around the defense. Nobody home in the paint. Fauntleroy cut off by Hamlin. Johnson cycles to Scott for three. Good! Talia Scott, a dagger.
A successful trip for Baylor, sweeping Utah and BYU.
Nikki Collin
Big 12 radio, Big 12 today. A sport that we all know and love is going to be crowning a national champion tonight. Will it be Indiana? Will it be Miami? And will there be a Big 12 team involved in 2027, James Westling? Along with James, I am Ari. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo here on this Modelo Monday. And remember, Modelo fan rule number 41.
Off-season optimism is mandatory. Super fired up to talk about your Hawks tomorrow. Part of our transfer portal tracker series.
Kansas playing for national championship next year?
Who is this quarterback? You gave us just a little tease.
Yeah, we'll hear about him tomorrow.
A little tickle.
We'll
You got a portal quarterback?
You better believe it. You ever watch a lot of Rice football?
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
I actually have watched more Rice football than you might expect. I had one of their games this season.
I know you did. So I'm super jazzed to get your thoughts on the new Kansas quarterback edition through the portal that may or may not have been playing quarterback for Rice the last few years.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting, I might say. Was he the starter?
I should hope so.
Me and you both.
I should certainly hope so.
I thought, you might be fired up about a highly touted high school prospect who sat the bench last year at Rice.
No,
You
and they go to
never know.
Rice. Highly touted quarterback prospects.
Never know.
Always go to Rice. We know that. I think, this is the first time we've talked about this, but when you look at Indiana, this is a favorite in a national championship game that represents something huge for the Big 12, and that is a team that is not a blue chip ratio team, not flush with 4- and 5-star talent, that made its roster through the portal, is a position to win a national championship. No team in the modern recruiting rankings, in the modern recruiting era, has won a title with less than 50% of their roster, 4- and 5-star recruits, and Indiana has a chance to do it, which, again, huge news for the Big 12 that does not have any blue chip ratio teams. Miami is a blue chip ratio team, so if they win it, it'll be another year where a non-blue chip ratio team got to the national title but came up short.
What is considered the modern recruiting era?
Basically the 90s.
Okay, yeah.
So it's pretty substantial.
That's where my mind went to. 90s, maybe 2000. I think Rivals really started getting going basically with the birth of the internet, like early 2000s. Yep. So we're talking about a 25-year sample size, at least 25-year sample size, where a blue chip ratio team has never won. And we were listing off all the recent college football champions, even going back to the 80s. Indiana's very much an outlier. It's all the blue blood type programs that you expect to see. And where college football has differed in that sense compared to college basketball is just that. The college football national champion, because of the talent gap, because of the physical nature of the sport, those are the teams that usually win. So this is really cool to see, and something that maybe we won't see again for a really long time. I mean, if history's any indication, we won't. With that said, it's also just the second, a very small sample size of this new 12-team college football playoff, where maybe a Texas Tech or a BYU, which, by the way, BYU's one of those outliers that has won a national championship back in the 80s, can sneak in there. Colorado in the early 90s with a Georgia Tech. Those are the teams that come to mind. But since then, man, it's been everybody you'd expect it to be. And in college basketball, when really you only have 5 guys on the floor at any given time, you only need 3 or 4 really, really elite players, and then you can supplement them with glue guys that other teams in the country would have on their roster as well, which is why you can have teams like a Gonzaga sneak through, a team like Baylor sneak through and win the national championship, even going back to the 90s when Arkansas had their run. Like, you get more teams that aren't those traditional Kansas, UCLA, Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina winning national championships in that sport. So maybe this is the birth of a new era.
Yeah. And look, I think in some respects, like, if Miami were to win, does that completely undo this? No, because, I mean, it's still a remarkable 2-year run here for Indiana, and losing in a national championship game basically in a road environment, I don't think it would undo that. But there's been multiple non-blue chip ratio teams that have made the title to never win it. I mean, Clemson, before they were a perennial blue chip ratio team, went to the national title and lost to Bama as a non-blue chip ratio team. Oregon is another one that used to not be, now firmly is, that lost. TCU most recently, the non-blue chip ratio team to lose in a national championship. So it would certainly fall in that pattern, but I think like big picture, it shows the way Indiana's played the last 2 years. You can build this thing through the portal and build a behemoth in the modern era, and I think it's twofold. You know, and we've talked about this. There isn't as much dominance at the top because we aren't seeing, you know, a fire-breathing dragon of Alabama with 90% of the roster be blue chip stars. So because talent has started to go and be spread out further and further, I think it allows and opens up a door for an opportunity for a team like Indiana to break through in this capacity.
And those teams that weren't blue chip ratio teams that made it to the national championship game, it felt like, oh, that's cute. They've had a nice run.
Right.
And then everybody expected them to get pounded in the Natty. That's not the case with this one.
Right.
I mean, Indiana, on paper, all the metrics, they are the better team. They are the team that has the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. They are the team that's, I mean, their identity is efficiency and suffocating defense. They're top 3 in the country in both points per play and points allowed per play. And nobody else in the nation's even close to those numbers on both sides of the ball. Miami has a top 5 defense, but barely a top 30 offense. So Carson Beck has made big plays in the college football playoff, and they've gotten to this point, and Mario Cristobal has done a fantastic job, but they haven't seen a monster like Indiana in terms of X's and O's. They're number 1 in the country in third down conversion rate. Like, they do all the things discipline-wise, fundamentally sound-wise that a team is supposed to do, and they've paired it with experience and an older roster and just destroyed people all the way to the national championship game. And I'll be more surprised if this, you know, if this isn't a blowout. Like, that'll be the biggest surprise to me. Like, if Miami hangs in there and it's a really good game that goes into the fourth quarter, something tells me this could feel a lot like the Oregon game, because I think that's kind of the level I put Miami on. Like, is Miami that much better than in Oregon? And they beat Texas A&M, and then who'd they beat in the next round? Remind me. Ohio State.
Yeah, Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl.
With a redshirt freshman quarterback who had a lot of turnover-worthy throws this season. He had shown vulnerabilities, and then they just beat Ole Miss, who we all know their story. Fun to root for, also a total distraction. Your coach leaves. You've got a Division II quarterback who's balling out, don't get me wrong, but there were still a lot of inefficiencies and holes you could poke at with those teams. Indiana has none of those. None.
Yeah, no, well said. And look, are you picking Indiana to win and cover?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
See, I do think it'll be a closer game. I would take Miami to cover. I think Indiana wins outright, but I would take the points. I think we disagree there. I just think Miami has a ton of talent. I think they were. I mean, look, they didn't win the ACC or even play for the ACC championship game, but they had a 2-game stretch that basically undid them. But other than that, like, they've been a very good football team all year. Experienced quarterback. You know, the joke was the video that's been kind of playing throughout this week is Carson Beck saying to reporters, you know, when asked about if he went to class this week, like, I graduated 2 years ago, and everybody's like, this is college football in 2020. But I mean, look, that's I don't think that's much different than in many other years where you just have experienced quarterbacks. They're going to play a lot longer, and, you know, guys that maybe like will stick on to, you know, to a team, but not, you know, and finish classes out. So this shouldn't be as big of a surprise as people were making out to be. But I think Miami, like, as experienced and good as Indiana is, Miami is too. So I don't see this being a blowout. I think this game will be close.
And who are you rooting for in this game?
Indiana.
Are you rooting for a close game?
Yes.
From an entertainment
Yes.
value? Or
Yes.
I'd love to just see
Indiana just bludgeon them.
Yes, that. Thank you. You might have to start finishing my sentences the rest of the show.
You all right?
Sinuses got me down. I'm down bad, as T Swift would say. But also the like one little side thing. Something, I don't know. Does Miami take Indiana as seriously as they should.
I mean, how could they not? How could they not?
You're right. Based off of what they've seen,
this isn't a regular season game. Like this isn't a non-conference game. There is clear evidence here that Indiana should be taken very seriously.
Totally agree. But it's Miami. It's the U. You got Michael Irvin on the sidelines with the belt, and you're playing in your home stadium, and you have no modern sample size at all in terms of series history. These teams, they've played like one time, and it was ancient. It was like back in the 50s. I mean, they don't know each other at all. It's Indiana, right? So, I mean, this isn't just I don't know. When I watch Carson Beck and just the way that he speaks publicly, the way that Miami talks, just something tells me Miami might be overconfident for this game. Where like they had a chip on their shoulder against Ohio State because it's Ohio State. Chip on their shoulder at Texas A&M, it's Kyle Field. Same thing with Ole Miss. And then you get to this game, and it's like we're already here. We've got the more talented players. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking that, but we'll see.
All right, so this represents a third straight year with the SEC being shut out from playing in the national championship. Look at your crystal ball. Is the Big 12 or the SEC playing in a championship game next year?
Next year?
Yeah.
Well, tomorrow we're going to discuss some of the way too early top 25s.
Okay.
Which has Texas Tech, for the most part, around 6 or 7. Which, remember, they started towards the bottom of the top 25 and weren't even ranked in the very first preseason AP top 25. So they could have some losses in the regular season is what I'm saying and still be in the conversation. I don't know. I mean, LJ Martin coming back to BYU, like, don't sleep on the Cougars. They look like a team that could be very Indiana-like next year with a quarterback who got so much better as a passer. And then all that experience, older roster, receivers back, running back. They haven't done a ton of movement in the portal because they don't have to. I'm much higher on BYU than I've ever been. And I've been, pretty high on them before, but next year could be the year. So do they play for a national championship? Sure, I'll say yes.
Well, I would make the case that maybe it's BYU that should be the favorite in the Big 12 next year based on how many games they've won in the Big 12 over the last 2 seasons based on Bear Bachmeier.
Players coming back,
yeah.
Yes.
So, we assume Tech because of what they do in the portal and the talent that they add. But, again, I'd argue BYU should be the favorite. And so maybe BYU is in position to be a team competing for a national championship next year.
And the Big 12, announced its 4-year scheduling matrix through 2027. And let's see, Texas Tech 2027 plays at BYU. Schedule comes out later this week, but we know who the opponents are, home and away. We just don't know where they lie in the Big 12 schedule. But Texas Tech at BYU next year, that's going to be a monster game in the Big 12.
Yeah. Wednesday. The schedule is released on Wednesday, James.
Okay.
So stay tuned for Big 12 Radio because you might get a few of those matchups before the official release of these games Wednesday of this week. So this is the perfect week with the end of the season officially here after tonight into tomorrow. Should be a lot of fun. All right, James Wesley, Ari Temkin, Tobe Awaka, the Arizona Wildcats forward, joins us next. He's been phenomenal for a team that has been so good in the interior and rebounding, and he is a rebounding machine, a rebounding menace. Tobe Awaka joins us next. Along with James Wesley, I am Ari Temkin on this Modelo Monday. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Kai Hara. As we tip things off in Tempe, Kansas starts with a basketball.
Limiting Nichols' touches offensively.
And down for 3, it's long. Fight for that rebound. Davis finds it. Brings it back low. Up and the foul. She'll shoot 1.
Molly Miller about her pregame routine. And he's having a ball right now.
And they're going to call a foul and the basket. As Kansas will take the lead back. Good feed and the foul. Gabby Elliott on the assist from Kaihara.
On the way to the left side of that rim.
To a 3-point lead for Kansas. Elliott spins into the lane, high off the glass, and the foul. That's exactly why 6'3" Reagan Williams is set to check in. Got to put one up. Kaihara, the touch, and the floater goes. She works off the screen to switch on to Nichols. Another corner three, a splash from Copeland. They're going to need the 3-point bucket to start to fall if they want to come back. At the level, Kansas to come back in this one. They get it into Williams. That one's blocked by Brackens. Gets it back and the foul. 2 to shoot. Got to put it up and another block from Washington. Lays it in this time with the left hand. It's all Marley on that possession. Molly Miller's first season and stays undefeated here at home. 16-point win over Kansas.
A huge bounce-back effort from ASU, who has dropped 2 of their last 3 games, but this was
This is Tobe Awaka from Arizona, and you're listening to Big 12 Radio, exclusively on TuneIn.
It's Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios, and we are so pleased to be joined right now by one of the key pieces to the number 1 team in the nation, the undefeated Arizona Wildcats. Tobe Awaka is joining us here on Big 12 Radio. Good morning, Tobe. How are you?
Morning.
How's it going? How's the season going?
Going well. Appreciate you guys having me on.
You had like 25 points the other night, right?
Yeah, that was I believe Wednesday, Arizona State.
Where did that come from?
I don't know. I think my teammates just did a great job of finding me in the right spots. You know, it was just one of those days where shots were falling and I felt good. And, yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of times you look at your stat line and you see the rebounding and the blocks, the physicality you play with, and maybe, it's one of those you put people on notice. Like, yeah, by the way, I could score too. I could knock down threes. I could shoot. I could score some points.
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, I just try to affect the game in any way I can. So, for me, it might not always be rebounds, blocks, or, defensive plays. It might be scoring 15 one day or having 15 rebounds another day, 5 blocks another game, So I try to be adaptive and sort of versatile in the way that I approach the game, game in and game out.
Tobey, I think when people watch you play, they see this big physical rebounding machine who can score it and do a bunch of different things. Man, I know you're incredibly intelligent and impressive off the floor, too. Nate was telling me that you interned on Wall Street. Is that right? And what was that experience like? What's your major? Like, what are you doing off the court?
Yeah, so I'm in the Eller Business School right now. My concentration is business administration. I'm really interested in finance and investing. So I had a great opportunity to go on Wall Street on a hedge fund, sort of shadow their top portfolio manager and just see the ins and outs of what life is like over there. But it was super cool. I got to learn a lot, get some sort of real-time experience, and kind of sort of bring school and merge it with the real world and see how they operate over there. So it was really cool.
Man, that's awesome. That's big time. And your rebounding numbers are insane. You're a numbers guy, all right? So if you're a numbers guy, you're rebounding like 30% of available misses, which is number 1 in the country according to KenPom.
It is a ridiculous number.
Like, are you one of these analytical guys when it comes to rebounding, like where if a shot's attempted in the corner, it's most likely to miss on the other side of the basket? Like, what all goes into being such a dominant rebounder?
Honestly, stats are never really a big, emphasis for me when I'm playing. I kind of find it harder to play when I'm focusing on stats, seeing like, how many rebounds I can get in this, spurt of 3 minutes. Like, I can't really focus and play like that. Honestly, it's just something I've been doing for a while, and sort of it's helped me carve out a role within college. So I think I've put more emphasis on it, but I just kind of, try to play as free as possible once I step in the court. But I think one thing that has helped is knowing how individual teammates miss in certain positions. So, like, for instance, Jaden Bradley, whenever he shoots threes, his threes sort of miss, more so long, I would say. And then a guy like Deli, if he misses, it's like bouncing around the rim. So just kind of like knowing your personnel, and it might be different if they're shooting from the corner than from the top of the key. So like that kind of stuff I've kind of keyed into a little bit.
Feels like a good thing for a guy like with the offensive rebounding numbers that Tobey has to know, on the offensive end how his teammates, may miss if they do miss. That's a great insight there from Tobey Awaka.
You sound like Dennis Rodman from The Last Dance, because he would study the odds of where a shot was taken, where it's most likely to bounce off of the rim, and that sounds kind of like what you're talking about. That's impressive.
Yeah. I think I saw it during the pandemic. That clip for sure. But I think just like being with these guys over the summer, you get so used to their tendencies, how they play. You just kind of get a good feel of just the shots they're going to shoot, where they're coming from, and where they're going to bounce off eventually.
When Arizona as a team, I mean, this is a good rebounding, a great defensive team, and a team that wins by scoring in the paint. It's kind of interesting. That feels like that's a huge part of your game. I mean, do they, just I guess give us a sense here of the emphasis. Is it just that's the style you guys play with because it fits the personnel you have? Just curious, because obviously you in many ways personify the style Arizona plays with and wins with this year.
I would say it's a little mix of both. I think Coach Lloyd, that's he's known as an offensive coach, but he loves, tough guys that can get it done inside. If you look at his personnel throughout his years at Gonzaga and, now at Arizona, he's always had, sort of strong big guys that can get it done inside. Umar Ballo of the past, Zealous Tubelis previously. And then I think, honestly, Big Mo Creevers is a big, facet of what we do. I feel like sometimes he doesn't get his flowers the way that he should, but I think he's one of the best bigs in the country. He's 7'2", skilled, and the way that he can move for a guy his size with the touch around the rim. I think he's really a staple of what we do and how we play. So I think honestly, all that anchors with him.
Tobe, how much do you work on your three-point shooting in practice? Because you've only taken 6 this year, but you've made 4. You're 4 for 6, 67% from beyond the arc, and you've made your last 3. 2 against Utah. You hit 1 the other night. Where has that come from?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I've been working on for a good while here. Just sort of trying to refine it, get it better. And honestly, it's just been repetitions, working at it. And then sort of implementing it in practice. Coach has seen that I've gotten better at it. He's sort of giving me the green light to shoot, when the time is right. So it's just been something I've been working on. I'm trying not to. I'm still trying to sort of lean on what I'm good at, my strengths, not let the 3-point shot take over or anything like that. But obviously, to play at the next level, you have to show that you can sort of extend your range a little bit. But, obviously on this team right now, we have plenty of guys that can shoot threes and do all that. So I'm just trying to make sure I can maximize my role where I can make the biggest impact. But if they come for sure.
Apologies about that, Tobe. Tobe Awaka joining us here. This team looks, like they're very connected, lots of great chemistry, and it's obvious on the floor. Like, is this a team that likes to hang out? What do you guys like to do off the floor? And, can you just kind of speak to the team's chemistry?
Yeah, I think we have a group of guys that really like each other genuinely. I think we have great character, from the top down. And, guys will always do stuff together, whether it's like game night at a teammate's house. Guys love playing video games. 2K is a big one. So yeah, we always find time to sort of hang out with each other, whether it's just getting a meal after practice. Ping pong is pretty big after practice now in the locker room, so guys will stick around watching each other play. So I think it's been, I think we all like each other for sure, but it's been natural, it's been genuine, nothing forced or anything like that. So I think that's been really cool to see.
Who's your go-to team on 2K?
I don't really play 2K. They do. I'm not really a big 2K player. I used to play the college football game, pretty heavy, but ever since September, I've really stopped. I haven't really played too much.
You're a little busy. You're a little busier this time of year.
Yeah.
All right, so if we're heading to Tucson, what's the number one spot that we have to hit in Tucson, Arizona?
Baja Cafe, the breakfast place. I think that place is unbelievable. I've gone there many times. It never disappoints. So if you guys are stopping in Tucson, that's definitely a place to stop.
How about Dirtbags? I've heard Dirtbags is the spot to go.
I think I've been to Dirtbags once since I've been in Tucson. It was an interesting experience for sure. But yeah, I'll probably leave it at that.
Tobe, you're the best. Keep doing what you're doing, man. You're fun to watch. Motor that doesn't quit. Your team's fun. You're fun, man. Keep doing what you're doing, brother. Thank you.
Thanks, Tobe.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for having me.
Tobe Awaka joining us here on Big 12 Radio, one of the fiercest rebounders. I mean, and yeah, you hate to mention Dennis Rodman because when you think about, non-traditional posts that rebound at that level, you think Dennis Rodman, but that's a great comp. I mean, he's got a motor that doesn't stop, and whether it's blocking shots, rebounding, and he said it himself, like whatever the team needs him to do is what he's going to do.
And that's the way he plays. I mean, he can go out and score 25 if you need him to. He can grab 15 rebounds if that's his role. He's an underrated passer. But the rebounding stuff was fascinating to me because I do believe there's an art to it. You get to this level, everybody's big and tall and has wingspans. But Tobe Awaka, who's 6'8", leads the country in rebounding percentage. 30% of all shots are rebounded by him.
Just insane.
And that's that's all shots. That's not
right
offensive rebounds. That's where he's even better. So he's got this hit first 255-pound frame, but then it's leverage, it's timing, it's knowing where the ball is most likely to come off the rim based off of who on his team is shooting. Just really impressive stuff. High-level athlete.
Yeah, Arizona 18-0. They will play on Wednesday night at home against Cincinnati, and then this weekend West Virginia at home before at BYU, and then at Arizona State next week. So a couple of home games here for Arizona this week to try to get to 20-0 before at BYU on a week from tonight.
26th, yep.
At BYU,
yeah.
week from tonight. Should be fun.
Big Monday.
All right, great work as always from our production team with Big 12 Studios, led by Anthony Smith. Great work as always from our producer here at TuneIn, T-Chains, Taman Turner. Thanks to James Westling. I am Ari Tepkin. This show has been presented by Modelo here on this Modelo Monday. Have a great MLK Day. Enjoy the national championship tonight. We're back tomorrow to recap it, plus get you ready for Tuesday Night Hoops. That's all on tomorrow's show. For James Westling, I am Ari Tepkin. Big 12 today. It's back tomorrow, but for now we're out. Peace.
Hammond going to